allegiance, please. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Well, we have one thing we'd like to ask Mr. Willauer, asking if the third district or someone who served the town, right?
Yeah, I'd like to have a moment of silence from Marina Finch. Marina, whom I knew quite well, was an EMT, call firefighter, former SHAB member, and an active scholar, a very vociferous scholar. And I'd like to have a moment of silence for her.
Well, thank you. And we'll start the meeting tonight with the county commissioners and turn it over to Pat.
All right, I'm going to convene the meeting of the County Commissioners for the 7th of March, 2012. First item on the agenda, announcements. Any announcements? Seeing none. Public comment. Anyone here tonight for the county with matters that are not currently on the agenda? Seeing none. New business, know of none. And official business. Request for determination of disclosure of financial interests by state employee for H. Flint Rainey, Steamship Authority Governing Board, Nantucket member, pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 268A, Section 6. I thought I'd just ask the board if they had any questions. We have a pretty thorough presentation, written presentation in our packet. If there's no questions from the board, then I entertain a motion to...
I would be happy to make the motion that we, what's the right motion? Let me help us here.
Recognize the disclosure?
Recognize the disclosure and have no objections to Mr. Ranney participating in spite of that disclosure or consistent with that disclosure.
And find that the financial interest is not so substantial as to be deemed likely to affect his services to the town and county.
Well stated.
Thank you.
Second.
Excellent. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, opposed? None. That would carry. Any commission reports tonight? This is not a typical county night, so don't expect much. All right, motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you. Favor? Thank you. Rick?
All right, why don't we open the meeting of the Board of Selectmen for 7 March? And the first item on our agenda will be to accept the agenda as it's written. And I hear no objections. We'll continue to proceed. And we have next announcements. And Libby, the town meeting, tell us about that.
Okay, annual town meeting this year. I feel like this isn't on. Can people hear me? Okay.
Lights on.
Yeah. I'll try to speak loudly. Town meeting starts this year on Saturday, March 31st. We'll start at 8:30 and go till 5 or whenever we think we're concluded for that day. And if we do not finish that day, we'll proceed to Monday, the following Monday at 6 p.m. The annual town election will be Tuesday, April 10th. Polls will be open from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. at Nantucket High School. And one more thing, Mr. Chairman, that's not on the agenda. I spoke with Jeff, our NCTV director, just before the meeting, and he was going to come out and give a quick... Is he in there?
Erica, could you ask Jeff to come out? Ask Jeff to come out.
He was going to give a quick update about NCTV.
We have Jeff, welcome. Jeff is Jeff Tucci. How do you pronounce your last name?
My audio is working, so I'm going to Tosi.
Tosi.
Hey,
Jeff's
we
usually
getting audio?
in the
Sounds like
back
we're getting
room,
audio.
and we're letting him out for a special update on the status of NCTV.
Yep, surprise. So yeah, we are, as a lot of people have known, that we have a lot of the meetings online. On our Vimeo page, our actual website is, I would like to say, a week away. We just got our brand together, which was a very big step in everything, just designing our identity as a whole. But yeah, so if you want to see these meetings, you can. I'm going to give a long extension here, but next week when our website is up, it'll be a one-click. You go to nctv18.org, and you'll be able to click it once. But if you guys have your pens ready, if you want to see them this meeting, I suppose, it's Vimeo Pro, VIMEOPRO.com slash NCTV 18. That's the number 18 slash BOS for Board of Selectmen. And we have 3 meetings up. We'll have 4 after this one. And then it'll be a lot easier to find once we have nctv18.org. So that's where that is. That's where that is. I didn't want to say that. As far as the station goes, we're doing a test this week, and hopefully the screen will no longer be blue on Channel 18. We're shooting for Friday. I hate to say this in front of a large group, because you never know once you plug things in what's not communicating with different pieces. But we're going to go for it, and that's not to say, we're going to have 24-hour programming on Friday. We're going to have maybe our bulletin board up, have events that we're going to be covering. Maybe these meetings, we can have a time that people will be able to see them, that it's friendly. It's a matter of having enough content to maintain a station, since it's only me out there shooting them, editing them, and starting this station by plugging these things together. But we're close. The website's going to be a really big step as far as soon as something's done from our end, we can post it and people can see it. Our web presence is going to be very important. And then the channel will develop. So are there any other questions that I'm not addressing? I feel like I'm rambling.
Yes. The URL was VIMCO.
EO.
EO.
Vimeo is the video
Vimeo.
host that we're using. Yes.
And
It's
then
like video with an M.
Vimeo, and then the next 3 letters are E again.
P.
P, as in Peter.
Okay. PRO.com.
Yep, it's vimeopro.com
Okay.
slash NCTV18 slash
Thank you.
BOS. Yes, sorry. I wish I had a graphic right here to show everybody. If I was back there, maybe I could work something out, but...
Jeff, great. I think we're all eager to see you up online, live, and in the meantime, we get it on the computer, so that's nice.
Great, cool. Thank you.
Thanks. Libby, back to you.
That's it for
That's
announcements.
it for now, for the annual town meeting. The next item on our agenda then is public comment for anybody who would wish to address the board tonight for items not on our agenda. Yes, sir, over here, Mr. Ray.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm actually here for a short advisory. I'm sure everyone has, or most people have noticed, the large lit-up board on the beginning of the Sconset Road denoting the low flyover for the next few days associated with the detection of munitions that we're going through. I'm here to let you know that there will be a second form of flyover in the near future regarding a deer count. It will be the same sort of procedure. It will indeed be a second low-flying aircraft, certainly not in conjunction with what's going on right now, but there will be an aircraft flying at between 500 and 700 feet repetitively across the island on a day or so in order for us to accomplish our goal of establishing a deer herd population number for Nantucket. Needless to say, we're going to have to wait for some slightly cooler weather. Over the next couple of days, it's not going to happen, but we have been assured by the individual conducting the survey that some new equipment that has been integrated into his aircraft does no longer require snow to be present, so it can do it on the cooler days and pick out the warm-blooded animals.
Good. Any questions, Richard? Thank you.
You answered my question, Richard. Thank you.
Thought I could anticipate.
Is there anybody else who would like to? Yes, sir, back here.
Good evening. I'm Ken Blackshaw. I'm a Nantucketer and a member of the Energy Support Committee. And I just want to kind of report that I am personally a bit confused at the attitude of the town Board of Selectmen and other agencies. The Energy Support Committee has done its best and thought we were following the instructions of the town. And now it seems like our recommendations are being not appreciated. And I find it confusing, again, to try and do the town's business and do what we thought we were being told to do, and then to be treated in this manner. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else with public comment for us tonight? All right, if not, we'll move on to the agenda. And the next item is new business. Members, I'm not aware of any new business. So we will then move into the approval of minutes, warrants, and pending contracts. And the first item is the approval of payroll warrants for the weeks ending 26 February and 4 March. And if there's no objection, they will be approved. And we then have the treasury warrant for 29 February and 7 March. And if there's no objection, that will be approved. Pending contracts, we will turn to the town manager to review the pending contracts. Libby.
Okay, we have several contracts tonight. The first is a professional services agreement for Our Island Home with Lois Sager for $35,000 for a 3-year contract, so it's just over $10,000 per year, for speech and language therapy for the Island Home residents, and the source of funding is the Island Home operating budget. We have another professional services agreement with the GIS IT department with Fat Pipe Networks. It's a software vendor for $1,425. That's for software and operational support services. We have a utility contract with the police department with Verizon Business for $32,184. That's a 3-year contract for conversion of voice over IP phone system for beginning with the police and some other departments. Eventually, all town departments will be converted to voice over IP, and we do, just so you know, have an additional appropriation request on this year's town meeting warrant to continue that process. Right now, that funding is coming from the public buildings budget. We have a service contract for various town departments with Nantucket Septic, Inc.
Libby, do we want to pick this one up?
Yep.
Go ahead then.
Let me just, I'll
Okay.
finish the contract and then explain.
Yep.
It's a 3-year contract for porta potty and septic pump outs. Comes from various departmental budgets, and this is for Marine Department and Park and Rec mostly. $59,100. And the principals of Nantucket Septic, Inc. are employees of Wannacomet Water and require, in accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 268A, financial interest disclosure exemptions, sort of similar to what you most recently did as county, not quite the same, but similar. And that probably ought to be voted by you if you so desire before this contract actually gets voted.
So we'll
So we
pick
can
that
come
up
back
again
to that.
after that agenda item.
Was it competitively bid?
Yes.
Okay.
We have a professional services agreement with Human Services, for the Human Services Department with Danielle Briard, sorry. DBA Act Healthy, $30,000 3-year contract. And Danielle will be our project coordinator for our Mass in Motion grant, which Pam could explain if need be. Thank you. Lastly, we have a memorandum of agreement which should be separately voted on by you all with the Town of Nantucket and the Nantucket Public Employee Committee. This is not, this is a collective bargaining item, and it relates to changes to group health insurance pursuant to the process authorized by Mass General Law, Chapter 32B, Sections 21 through 23. As you will recall, back in November, the board voted to enter into that process, and it's quite specific in the law. We've been proceeding through it ever since and have now reached an agreement with the Public Employee Committee on changes to plan design of health insurance. But that does, I think, require a separate vote by you, and there may be not all of you that would vote on it.
Right. So if we want to tackle that one first separately, the memorandum is in substantial detail, but it has been agreed to by both parties, and we're looking for a resolution tonight for the board to endorse the agreement so that we will be prepared to sign it and move forward. I assume that's the case?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Right. So, Bobby? I'll make a motion to. And Whitey?
Second?
Second. Any further discussion? All in favor on that motion, say aye.
Aye.
And we recognize that 2 of our members are not voting on this matter, so thank you.
Mr. Chairman, could I just add to
Yep.
that This was a new process pursuant to the Health Insurance Reform Act, which was adopted by the state last July. And there may be some public interest in what the plan design changes are. The agreement, as you noted, is very detailed and it's also pretty thick. We're happy to provide it to anybody. And I also would want to thank the Public Employee Committee. The negotiations were a little tough from time to time, but we did avoid going to the review panel. We would have been, as far as we knew, the first municipality to have done that if we weren't able to reach agreement within the prescribed time frame for negotiations as specified in the statute. But the committee worked hard and was very concerned about the changes' impact on its members, and we do very much appreciate their coming to agreement with us in the end.
Well, I think we all do. I mean, as the town manager said, I'm sure these things are not always easy, but I think they were appropriate, and they hopefully in the long run work for all sides. So, all right. Then we will go on with our agenda and come back to the other contract after the. Yeah, I think if there is no objection to the four, we'll approve them as we have in prior meetings.
So the septic, the Nantucket septic is
Right, till after we do the disclosure issue. And then, so we threw the contracts there, and the first item then under citizen and departmental request is a request for determination on disclosure of financial interest by a state employee for Nathaniel E. Lowell, the Steamship Authority Port Council member, pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 268A, Section 6. And as in the prior meeting, we've received a letter outlining the matter, and the board would need to adopt a similar resolution if it feels it's appropriate for Mr. Lowell.
I move that we accept the disclosure and the language that we added before that Libby read so.
Do you want to read that so nicely? Is it in the letter?
I've memorized it by now. It's to find that Mr. Lowell's interest in this matter is not so substantial as to be deemed likely to affect the integrity of his services to the town.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good. Well done, Patty.
Yeah, I was gonna
Is there a
say
second?
what she said.
Any further questions the board members may have of Mr. Lowell? If not, why don't we move for a vote? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, okay. Mr. Lowell, you got it? Mr. Ranney, you got it? Next item on our agenda is a request for approval of exemption on disclosure of financial interest by a municipal employee for Robert West, again pursuant to Mass General Law 268A, Section 20B. I don't know if we want to do these all together, but they are similar. Yes, Bobby?
myself from this because I'm related to Mr. Westman.
So then I think we should take them individually. And again, Libby, do you want to describe briefly, because it's the same issue for the next three parties, just so we all understand what we're doing?
Since the individuals of Nantucket Septic, Inc. are employees of the Wannacomet Water Department, which is an agency of the town, pursuant to Chapter 268A, Section 20B, municipal employees are not allowed, not permitted by state ethics laws, to hold what's known as multiple contracts, which means they cannot be paid in more than one capacity by the town without this finding and disclosure of financial interest. And the form is just called Disclosure of Financial Interest by Municipal Employee, Certification by Head of Contracting Agency, and approval as required by General Law, Chapter 268A, Section 20B. The contracting agency is technically the Board of Selectmen, because we are contracting with them for their services.
So they're providing pump out and porta potty services
Correct.
for the town.
Yep.
They're municipal employees as defined, and we're being asked to recognize that their private party interest here is not so substantial to interfere in their, I guess, their completion and performance of their public duties. And that's the way I look at it.
Correct. They cannot perform these services while they are working for the municipality, and they have indicated that they have a non-municipal employee who will handle any matters that arise during their workday.
Right. And we've received an email from Mr. Gardner, the water company supervisor, who's indicated he recognizes this as a reasonable adoption of this recognition by the board, and he's confident that their performance as water company employees will not be hindered. Whitey?
Does Mr. Gardner want to speak on this subject?
He's in the audience and he's stepping forward. I don't know that you have to, but you've been asked if you would like to speak on the subject, Bob?
Good evening. Thank you.
Yeah, you don't have any problems with that?
I do not have any problems at all. We've had several meetings. We've worked out the details. There is absolutely no conflict for one comment with their request.
So they'd be doing it after hours?
That's correct. Answering systems have been set up, not an issue. And it's my responsibility as the manager to make sure there isn't and monitor the situation. That's what we'll do.
Right. I mean, it seemed clear, for example, customers calling in for phone call issues or other things, you want to make sure they're not, impinging on their work, so.
I just want to know that I think it's important to note that their hours of work are 7 to 3:30, which I think gives a little bit more indication that they got they do have afternoon time and evening time available to them on their private time.
And I think the question you asked earlier about the competitive bid is
Right.
an important part of this as well. So there we go. The pleasure of the board.
I'm scared to say move approval because I don't have memorized yet the language if we need to
It's
repeat it.
a little different
Okay.
from what I
But I
said
do.
anyway.
Question?
Yes, Michael.
Chairman, do we have to do these individually, or can we do them?
Well, I think if our one member is related to the first one, he may be able to step back up here for the next two.
Okay.
So we may want to do one, and then we could do maybe the other two together.
I suggest you just do all three.
You wanna do all
maybe,
three while we're
just
here? That's
write
fine.
one right after the other.
Yeah, I
maybe.
have no problem with that. So the motion then would be to
Accept the disclosure,
accept the disclosure for all three of
Permit.
the individuals.
yeah,
And approve the exemption.
approves the exemption.
Okay, so it's been moved. Is there a second? Second, any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, so we're done with that, and
Thanks, Bobby.
is Mr. DeCosta still?
He's on other business, I think.
All right. So that takes us up through, yes, fine, thank you, Erica. So we have to go back to the contract, and if there are any objections, then we'll order the contract approved as submitted. So that will complete that portion. Thank you, Erica. And the next section on our agenda are two public hearings. The first one is to consider a petition for Verizon, New England, and Nantucket Electric, National Grid, Plan VZ, NE Inc., number 2011C-29, to locate a new pole. We had this a couple weeks ago, and it was continued to tonight on the hope that the parties might come to an agreement. And is there anybody who wishes to speak on this matter? I don't know if we have to open it again, or we're still open. We're still open, I think. So would anybody like to speak in favor of the relocation of the pole? Anybody speaking against or have another comment on the matter? Mr. Gullickson.
Good evening, Kenneth Gullickson. I represent Melinda Rodriguez and Cynthia Thomas, who own the property at 4 Sparks Avenue, where this is proposed to be placed. Just to bring you up to date, we met in the hall after the last hearing. I gave the two gentlemen my business card. I have not heard from them since that meeting. I have seen the new proposed plan, which is slightly different. There are really two problems with this. One is what I would consider to be the practical, the other the legal. This is a 13-foot wide road that's proposed to have a telephone pole placed in it. It's already very narrow. I think to me, it's fairly obvious that placing a pole within a 13-foot road would hinder traffic and cause problems with flow and safety and everything else. Even there's some question as to exactly where the pavement ends, whether the grass is encroached over the pavement or where it ends, and whether this would be outside of the pavement by a few inches. But even if it's in the grass area, it's still a 13-foot wide road. It would be right there. I think anybody driving down would clearly give it a certain amount of leeway so that they didn't strike the pole. There's a further issue that if you can't really see it from the photographs, but if the wires were relocated, they would cut through that tree, so that tree would have to be cut, at least that branch that extends to the left in the left-hand photo, which they have no right to do. Perhaps more importantly are the legal arguments that this procedure, I believe, is filed under, or this application, Mass General Laws 166, I think it's Section 22, for the placement of utilities in a public way. Milestone Lane is not a public way. So really, it's the wrong procedure. The town does not have any right or authority to grant permission to place a pole in the way because it's not a public way. It's owned, the land in question, including under the pavement, is owned by my clients. Without an easement from them, which there is none, the utilities have no authority to put the pole there, even if the board grants them permission from the town. They don't have permission from the landowner, so it can't be placed there.
Questions or comments from the board?
I went and viewed it. You can already see in the photos, it's right on the road, and you can see where when the cars make that corner there, especially if it's a delivery truck or something of that nature, he's already cutting the corner awful tight. Not to mention what would happen with a snowplow or anything like that. I think this is just one situation where a pole there is not a good idea. I mean, they're going to have to drill a hole to put that pole in. They're going to hit the root base of that tree. They are going to have to cut. If they move the other pole over towards the split rail fence, and the wires are going to go through the center of that tree and just do more damage to the tree. I mean, it's not broken right now. Why don't we just leave it the way it is?
Yeah, I think to remind us, this came about from the planning board wanting to clear up the pole existing in the parking lot across the street. So one option is to just say the pole stays there until there's a solution that's acceptable. I don't know how the board.
That pole in that parking lot had a retaining wall around it with a planter in it, and that's been removed now. So now a car can hit that pole. Prior to that, you couldn't hit that pole. There was a retaining wall there. So somebody decided to remove the retaining wall before the pole was moved.
So any other questions or comments? This is a public hearing? Yes, ma'am. Please.
I'm from Verizon. My name is Corrine Green, and I'm the engineer for Nantucket.
Would you mind going to the mic? Sorry about that. Thank you.
My name is Corrine Green. I'm engineer for Verizon for Nantucket. Milestone Lane is actually a town way. I do have the town petition that allowed us to place the existing poles on Milestone Lane, and that was granted in May 25th, 1950. I do have a copy with me if you'd like to look at it. We did cite to place the pole a little bit further down Milestone Lane, so we are not at the top of the street. We are petitioning to place it 14 feet down the lane. Part of the reason why we're placing the pole there is to keep the wires away from the tree and also keep the primary wires out of the way of the tree. And that's what we're trying to do. Because of the initial pole that we were asked to relocate, which was pole number 2 on Sparks, it is going to push the wires over to their property. With placing the pole, we are going to hold the wires more towards Milestone Lane and off of the customer's property. That way we'll try to minimize or prevent any aerial crossing.
There we go. Any further questions from the board? Michael?
Well, without diagrams and materials for us to have seen by now, it's hard for me to make a determination in favor of moving the pole at this point.
Public records.
Well, as I said, clearly the possibility is to leave the pole where it is until we come to some other resolution. We could agree as a board to close the public hearing and to consider our options or we could determine that we don't want to move the pole. I'm looking for some thoughts here, folks. Deny,
and
and they can always come back. That's a good point. Any other comments? Ken, yes?
I'd like to address, this appears to be a consent from the town to place the pole, which is basically what you're being asked to do tonight. The fact that the selectmen in 1950 thought it was a public way does not make it a public way. We've reviewed the record at the Registry of Deeds, and I'm satisfied that it's not a public way. This doesn't affect that in any way.
Gotcha. Okay, Whitey?
Is the flag on the first picture in the right location?
The flagged property marker was actually, I believe, placed by the customer. The smaller stake that is there, white and red, that is where we're anticipating placing the pole.
That's 14 feet?
From the road, 'cause
From
the sidewalk.
Sparks, because I know they were saying that it was a concern as far as doing the plowing, coming around the corner from Sparks onto Milestone. So we did go further down on Milestone instead of placing it closer to the road, because I know that was the initial issue, was we were going to place an anchor to anchor the pole, and people felt that the anchor would be a hindrance and the snowplows would hit it.
Right, the anchor was very close.
Exactly. So in the way we've got it set up now, there will be no anchor, it'll just be one pole.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Well, then why don't we, it seems to me we ought to close the public hearing and come to a decision by the board if we can reach.
Yeah, it looks like the wires go through the tree right now.
Right, and that's why we were going to place the pole, so we can hold them away from the tree, away from the customer's property. Because with the relocation of pole 2 on Sparks, it is going to then cause the wires to go over to the customer's property and be an aerial trespass, and that's why we're placing another pole. What our lineman would end up doing is, we would place the pole on the field side, so the wires would be on the road side, thus keeping them away from the tree, away from the customer's property.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
So, just let me walk through this. This is where the new pole will be.
Correct,
This pole is going to go over here.
correct,
Those wires now are going to go to this pole, and
correct,
then from this pole to this pole,
correct,
directly over that branch, correct?
correct.
Yeah, so that branch is going to have to go. So right now, the wires are in the hole between the two branches, but if the pole moves, we'll have to take the branch down.
Is that a question? or-
I think it's a statement.
It's an observation.
Observation.
The 2 lower wires are actually not electric, they would be Comcast and Verizon, so they are not going to catch the tree on fire.
Maybe we should just put them all underground. Thought you'd like to hear that.
Since we have Verizon here, maybe we can discuss that.
Next.
All right, anyway, if there are no further questions from the board, then I think we did, but let's close the public hearing. Is there a recommendation by the board to make a decision here? We can always deny, and it can be brought back to us if that's appropriate. That's one way to handle it,
Yeah,
but
I
whatever.
would move we deny the request.
Okay.
Second.
Motion been made, second, further discussion?
I'd like to thank Mr. Gullickson for bringing to our attention it's not a public way. That'll save the town some plowing money, I expect, when it snows next, so.
Well, we'll have to check with the DPW on that. You never know, Michael. All right, it's been moved and seconded to deny. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, so that's where we are on that one. The next public hearing is to consider an appeal, an HDC appeal, which we had continued from 2 weeks ago. My understanding is that the parties wish to continue again, and I think the date certain was, did I get May 9? May 9. So is there a motion to continue to May 9? Moved quickly, seconded.
No,
Before any-
I'm not seconding, I'm recusing myself.
You're recusing yourself.
I'll second it.
Bobby seconds it. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye. And Michael's happy because he won't be here.
Michael,
He made the motion, he's not going to be
no
here.
wonder he was so quick. Every day is important, Michael.
Yeah.
All right, that takes care of that. And we'll move on to the town manager's report. Libby?
Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to quickly review an information sheet, which I kind of said some of at the beginning of the meeting regarding town meeting.
Yep.
It is posted or will be posted very shortly on the town's website. Since we haven't had town meeting on a Saturday in a while, I wanted to just let people know some information about the Saturday town meeting. So again, it's Saturday, March 31st, starting at 8:30 a.m., the high school auditorium, the Mary P. Walker Auditorium. There, with regard to child care and activities for children, the Early Childhood Center at the high school will be open from 8:30 to 5 p.m. on Saturday for children's up to 5 years, children up to 5. It's not a drop-in center. A caregiver must be present with the child, and the ECC can accommodate a maximum of 15 children at any one time. The Boys Club will be open for children ages 6 and older from 10 to 4. The high school pool will be open. Of course, children need to be accompanied by an adult. Parking in the lot directly in front of the high school, middle school is reserved for senior citizens and the disabled. Please do not park there if you are not either one of those. Parking will also be available at the high school pool parking lot, the high school rear and first way parking lots, the boys club, and the elementary school. Please do not park on the Surfside Road bicycle path. You may also park on the north side of Vesper Lane as far off the road as possible. These are all usual places where we would park anyway at town meeting, just repeating them. And people attending the 2012 annual town meeting are also welcome to park at the hospital parking lot during the town meeting. As I mentioned, opening ceremonies will begin promptly at 8:30 a.m. We'll have a half-hour lunch break beginning around 12:30. Town meeting will resume after lunch and run to 5 with breaks as needed. At 5, the moderator will determine whether or not to continue on, recess until Monday, as I said, April 2nd at 6 p.m., same location. Morning and afternoon refreshment, snacks, and drinks will be provided in the lobby of the high school. Lunch will be provided in the high school cafeteria. A small fee will be associated with the food and drink items. The overflow area, in the event that town meeting attendees exceed the capacity of the auditorium, will be in the high school gym.
Provided there's no basketball game.
There's no basketball game. Thank you. And please be sure
There might
to.
be a basketball game?
Yes.
We've asked there not to be, but
But
you
it's
never know.
playoff season, so it all
Yeah.
depends what happens.
Please be sure to silence all cell phones during town meeting. That's something that we ask quite frequently, but people seem to forget, and it's very disruptive when they go off. All of this is posted on the website, and we're hoping for a good turnout,
Which is why we're trying a Saturday.
which is why we're trying
for
a Saturday.
Everybody. Yes, Whitey, and then I'll come to you, Bobby.
Bobby had his hand up first.
Bobby
No, it's
first.
all right. Go ahead, Whitey.
A question on the Early Childhood Center. Are the parents required to be there when the child is there?
A caregiver must be there. It doesn't necessarily have to be the parent, someone in charge of the child.
I'd heard that it had to be the parent, but a caregiver can. Thank you.
Just on the parking, during large events at the school, like the December Delight, for example, they have opened up the gate to the football field and allowed people to park around the edge of the field. And we may see if we can get that as well, because I think parking is going to be at a premium. So.
Well, usually when it's at night, they don't find you as easily, and people seem to always find a place to park. During the day, may be a little different. Michael?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I hope that we are trying to encourage folks to come to town meeting and participate. And I understand that in regards to parking, there are some strict rules about parking on bicycle paths and blocking hydrants and such, safety issues. And I'm hoping that only those really serious safety issues will require enforcement, because we don't want parking tickets blooming on people's cars while they're in town meeting.
I agree.
I think we're in general concurrence.
Yes.
So, all right. Libby, thank you on that. Are you all set? Do you have anything else for the town manager?
Just with regard to the warrant, so people understand what happens next with the motions. The Finance Committee finished their motions yesterday. You all will hopefully finish up your comments tonight. The warrant will be put into final format tomorrow and sent to the printer either tomorrow or Friday morning. It needs to get there by the end of this week so that it can be printed and mailed to the voters at least 7 days prior to town meeting. We did have some complaints last year that people didn't get it, even though it was mailed at least 10 days last year. They didn't get it until like the day of or the day before, some cases the day after. So we're trying to make sure we really get it out, although, of course, once it's out of our hands, it's out of our hands. Sorry? And it will be on the website as well, thank you. So people can go look at that.
So
as
it is
soon as it's
available.
ready.
We all know
Yep.
the vagaries of local post office delivery, and there are risks.
Yes. So that's about it.
Okay. Libby, thank you. And we'll then proceed on to the next item, Selectmen's reports and comments. The first item tonight is a discussion regarding the wind turbine and analysis of health, environmental, and other impacts. And just to remind us that as the wind turbine was to come before town meeting, the board asked that we have an opportunity to hear more specifically on some of the issues related to the wind turbine and set up this process. And we've had 2 previous sessions in which folks representing our Nantucket Energy Study Committee and other interests have addressed the board and given the board opportunities to ask questions so that they can be better informed. Tonight's session is similar. In this morning's or this afternoon's agenda-setting session with Mr. Willauer and the town manager, we discussed a possible way to handle this tonight, and I would maybe go through it quickly with the board, but I think it's important we have some board concurrence in how we're going to proceed. And one option is to ask each of the speakers designated in the agenda, and I should mention up front that 2 other individuals have stepped forward who would like to be heard tonight, and they are members of the HDC, David Barham, and I understand Linda Williams as well. So one way to handle this would be to have each speaker take no more than 5 minutes. We could have an opportunity for board questions after that speaker, and then move on to the next speaker. At the end, then the issue is whether or not we'd like to open it up for public questions of the speakers, because I think they're the ones providing information tonight. So if there are questions, they would be directed to those who have previously addressed the board, and then that would be the end of that agenda item. So I want to be sure we're clear on that amongst board members, if that process makes sense. Whitey, does that summarize what we talked about earlier?
Yeah. Yeah, it's 5 minutes for each speaker, and then the public comment would be how much?
I think we talked about public comment would be at the end. Between each speaker, there'd be an opportunity for board members to ask questions, and then if we get to the end, if there are 2 people, we can live with it, but if there are a number of people who wish to ask questions, and I'm not sure it's meant, Whitey, to be public comment. We've had a public hearing on this subject in January. I thought the intent of that session was to offer people a chance to ask questions of those who are presenting information. Is that your understanding?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. So questions in that sense hopefully don't go on. The question can be direct and clear, and if the person who they're directed to is still with us, they can answer, and if they can't, then they can't. So if that's where we're at with that agreement, then I would recognize Ann. Ann, you're with us this evening, I assume?
Just came in.
There you are. Ann Kutzma, you're on. Welcome. And just to mention, Ann is the chairperson of the Nantucket Energy Study Committee.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And good evening to everybody tonight. I'm Ann Cuspa, and I'm the chairman of the Energy Study Committee. It's great to see some new faces out here and some young faces. It's good to see everybody's taking an interest in the project because, young people, I think that the people here tonight can understand that the decisions that we make tonight will directly affect the island that we inherit. But I don't think that it's appropriate to say this is a generational debate. The crusade to make the world a better place has originated generations ago. Plenty of the more experienced folks that are here tonight or watching on TV, and they strongly support making positive environmental changes one step at a time. The Energy Committee consists of the following dedicated citizens: Dr. Whitey Willauer, Flint Ranney, John Stover, Chris McGee, Dr. Peter Morrison, Ken Blackshaw, Zach Dussault, Ian Golding, and myself. Tonight concludes a series of presentations explaining why the Energy Committee is advising the Board of Selectmen to recommend Article 13 to town meeting voters. What lies within reach is an opportunity to lighten the environmental load of our precious island. We have already made and continue to make great strides towards energy conservation. This wind turbine is another step towards an inspired vision of Nantucket, and it's where Nantucket needs to position itself as we look towards the century ahead. As we've most recently seen through the pollution of Nantucket Harbor, Long Pond, and Hither Creek, a careless approach to the environment can come back to bite us. The Board of Selectmen have an opportunity tonight to learn from that experience, take action, and endorse accountability. Every megawatt we produce on island from renewable sources is a megawatt that is not produced from gas and nuclear sources. Those are the primary sources of energy, where we get our energy on Nantucket, or coal and oil, which are our secondary sources of energy. Citizens and animals living near coal, oil, and natural gas sites are dealing with cancer, poisoned water, lung disease, oil spills, earthquakes, and death. Living on Nantucket is a privilege, and it's time to lessen the burden on other Americans who pay dearly for our luxuries. When evaluating the mass quantities of information related to the Nantucket Turbine Project, it is imperative to discern the motives behind the source. Studies funded by special interest groups are, by nature, slanted and biased. For this reason, it is important to keep in the forefronts of our minds the following indisputable facts. The landfill is an industrial site which uses a large amount of electricity to process our solid waste. The proposed location of the turbine is several thousand feet from the nearest residence. Conservation efforts at the landfill have already been maximized. Regarding other options for on-site renewables, there currently exists a moratorium on gasification in the state of Massachusetts. It is illegal. It is simply not an option. Solar arrays would require 10 acres of undisturbed land at 3 times the cost in order to generate the amount of electricity produced by one 900 kW wind turbine. Regarding the preservation of Nantucket's historic character, the HDC as a committee ruled that installing a turbine of this size at the landfill would not have a detrimental effect to this island's historic character. Regarding zoning bylaws, there is one single abutter who will be affected by the requested noise and fall zone variances. This is the land bank, and they have declared that they have no objection. The Massachusetts Department of Fish and Wildlife have determined that this site is not a priority habitat for any rare or endangered species. Along these lines, I'd also like to take a look at the evidence presented by the 2 existing Nantucket wind turbines. A relevant question to ask: how many bird strikes have been caused by the high school turbine? Anyone? Yes? 0.
At least 1.
0.
No, I'm sorry. You didn't ask me beforehand, but I know at least 1 herring gull was a casualty. I'm Ken Blackshaw, sorry.
I asked, that was according to the operator of the wind turbine. What is his name again?
I was there and I found the gull.
Okay, well, okay, 1. The answer is 1. How many bat strikes? Ken Blackshaw.
No bats, no balls.
What about the Bartlett's turbine? 0. Bat strikes 0. Regarding property values, a member of Common Sense Nantucket, a group of Dionys homeowners in opposition to the project, have expressed great concern regarding loss of homeowner equity. To explore this concern, CSN has employed an Illinois appraiser who has never set foot on Nantucket to write the McCann study, which is a document stating property values will be devalued up to 40% due to the installation of this turbine.
And just to be clear, because we're all...
Oh, how many minutes do I have
Vice
left?
Chairman advised me that we're.
Okay, I'm winding up.
We're at the 5-minute mark.
All right.
And
Basically,
we agreed in advance that all speakers would have 5 minutes.
I will conclude.
Thank you.
But what I'm trying to say is that this should raise flags for anybody who is earnestly trying to evaluate what is being presented to them when you're being told that a Midwest wind farm with 40 to 80 turbines is in parallel with what's going to happen here on Nantucket. And I guess common sense would lead those to believe that the tax abater on Nantucket would have more credence. And
Are we all set, Ann? I think we're into the. Please, this can be an issue with lots of speakers, so I'm just asking Ann to wrap it up, please.
Yes. I would like to introduce Dr. Timothy Weld, who is a health consultant, a local resident. He has volunteered his time to help us to figure out the health concerns surrounding this project. Dr. Weld.
Thank you, Ann. Mr. Chairman.
Dr. Weld.
This is for the slide. Right. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Oh, okay, good. We'll go to the next. The health impacts of the wind turbine are going to be both positive and negative. We'll quickly review some of the positive aspects. Nantucket has an outstanding wind capacity, wind velocity, meaning that we have an opportunity to harness more energy than comparable sites on the Cape. And there's an enormous worldwide precedent for this, Denmark, Sweden, Germany, and Germany intends to have complete independence from fossil fuels by 2050. I wish them luck. The major benefit of wind power is that, as Ann mentioned, we will displace fossil fuel combustion generators, and in a project, a wind farm the size of Cape Wind, that would end up each year of operation saving 12 premature deaths and well into the 5 figures with emergency room visits, bronchitis, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, and asthma attacks. It also results in no acid rain, whereas the fossil fuel combustion gives us oxides of sulfur and nitrogen, causing acid rain. The negatives. Annoyance is something that is going to be present in every environment where turbines are operational. I was unable to find a single study that did not have some residents who were extremely annoyed. Most of the annoyance subsides by roughly 50% after the turbine begins to operate, but in one instance it went the other way in a small study. Now, the audible noise is guarded by regulations which are now in place, and the infrasound, that is the inaudible sounds at 0 to 20 hertz, has regulations which are pending but not in place, and a peer review is underway for the impact of infrasound. It's important to remember regulations are pending, but they're not in place. The visual impact of a wind turbine varies with the beholder, not surprisingly. And in many studies, the visual availability of the turbine to a resident almost occludes the annoyance from sound. Not quite. To me, one of the most negative of the impacts is that this has caused a huge community conflict, and no one ever likes to see the Nantucket community polarized in a way that this seems to be able to do. But the benefits from a health perspective are weighted toward the good, and the annoyance factors will be present to a minority of residents in the community, but they will be present. Thank you.
Dr. Weld, thank you. Anybody, a board member, have a question or comment for?
Just have one more slide.
Do we miss one?
Yes. The purpose of today's presentation and presentations of other speakers tonight is to really spread information and awareness about the project. The Town of Nantucket Energy Office does attempt to keep the project website as up to date as possible. You can visit it at nantucketwind.org. We try to update it with final reports, videos. There's a great frequently asked questions section. But if you don't see the answer that you're striving to, or that you're looking for, leads us to our second point. Please let us know. You can contact us via the Town Energy website, which is acenergy.org. You can reach out to myself or any member of the Energy Study Committee or Town Administration. We'll get your question answered. Third, it's very important to, as Ann mentioned, look at the source of the information and evidence presented and really weigh the long-term positive and negative impacts for yourself. And just to clarify, the content was assembled by the Energy Study Committee, who are a volunteer subcommittee, and their main goal is not to be a proponent of the project, but to present the facts in an unbiased and even-handed way. Thank you.
Okay. Lauren, thank you. Board members, any comments? No? Our next speaker then is Simon Thomas. Is Simon with us? Mr. Thomas, you want to introduce yourself?
Hi.
Your firm and your relationship with the Energy Study Project?
Okay. Hi, thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Simon Thomas with Atlantic Design Engineers. We were hired by the Energy Study Committee in the town of Nantucket to look at three key components on the proposed Nantucket turbine. One was the visual impacts, which we did through a series of balloon tests and subsequent simulations that were taken all around town in terms of the visual impacts of the different turbines being considered. The second was the shadow flicker impact. I don't want to focus my time on that because results were very encouraging. We had very minimal impact. I think 2 hours per year, 120 minutes per year total was the highest number that we found, not because of anything other than we've got great setbacks relative to flicker impact. The primary thing I want to talk about is the noise study that we did. And when we started this work, and I think it was back about a year, end of December, one of the challenges was we had a moving target in that was when the first initial pushback from the Falmouth project was occurring. We've been involved and have a number of projects up, including 2 turbines at Mount Wachusett Community College, the 2 turbines down at Barnstable Wastewater Treatment Plant, the 2 large Vestas units up in North Central Correctional Institute. In the last 2 months, we've had a number of turbine projects go up, 3 in downtown Providence at Fields Point, very large utility, 1 in the town of Situate, and we've got 2 underway in Fairhaven. The one thing we all have in common is there is controversy before, during, and the question on a successful project is, have you addressed all the issues so that afterwards it becomes a well-received project like Portsmouth, Rhode Island? In terms of how we approached it, is at the time is not knowing what future standards may come in terms of noise. We tried to be as conservative as possible. The way we did that is we set up, I believe, 5 noise meters on site, including full spectrum analyzers. The intent was to get as much data as we possibly could because there's 3 objectives in the noise. One is, what is the ambient levels? The objective is to understand, once the turbine is up, what the impacts will be after in terms, and you're looking at your lowest period, which would be nighttime low ambient impacts. The second is, once you've done that, to understand from the turbine that you're looking at, what are the impacts from that turbine, what sort of noise are being generated. And the third is to model and take the results of the first 2, and we use a program called WinPro to determine what are the anticipated impacts under construction. having said all that, we set up and we collected data, I believe, for 4 days continuously. We followed it, and there's two standards. One is the Nantucket bylaw, which is looking for a 45 dBA impacted maximum level. The results of our study were we were okay at that level on 3 sides down the south property line where the net letter of no objection was occurred. And one of the key things there's no houses, residents, or anybody that would be at those impact levels. I think the second thing is with the moving target. Right now, there has been no other standard than the DEP standard, which is a nuisance threshold of a 10 decibel increase. We were able to show compliance with that level with the power wind turbine. And subsequent to us submitting the report, there's now a new CEC guideline. That CEC guideline, basically, I think we met all standards other than one of their requests is for 14 days of continuous data collection and excluding weather days. And that was one of the questions, I think, us and the Energy Committee talking about, is that something that's worth warranting to? In terms of the data we collected, we were very happy that we were able to collect a good range of data across good wind conditions. One of the things that was very helpful is, and again in this new CEC guideline, is we're looking to get as high wind monitoring as we can. We're able to get on about a 6 meter and 18-foot rise for that data. The power wind data is valid to 30 feet. It's a 10-meter data. So basically, when we applied the shear value, which we used 0.3, which was part of the Ambrose-Rand rebuttal, we were basically making an adjustment for 12 feet, and we feel that that number is a very conservative number for that adjustment. That's pretty much it. I think in terms of the overall noise, the levels were 1, 2, 3 dBA increases. I think we had one residence at the worst case, 8 meters per second, hit the 8. If I have time, if it's appropriate, just in terms of the RAND letter, which I did review, the advisory letter. In terms of the power wind, we used their specifications, and we always do for the noise assessment. In terms of field measurements, I just think, in my opinion, it would be very difficult to actually be able to monitor, test, and screen out background winds to actually to know what you're measuring was coming from the turbine versus what was naturally occurring in the windy conditions. We did use the quietest level. We used L90 to be conservative. We didn't use L90 for the lowest hour, which is the DEP standard. We used the lowest 10-minute interval that we measured for the report. All of our collection and data follow. How much time have I got left? 2 minutes. I'm trying to talk real quick. I apologize.
Tape change for sure?
Look at it.
You almost made it, Simon.
Okay. And again,
we wait for the thumbs up. Okay, you got it.
Yeah, okay. Again, for noise studies, and just background, we've been doing noise studies for probably about 20 years on projects, the last 6, 7, extensively on wind turbines. The methodology we follow is the IEC standards, which are the only ones that I'm aware of that make sense for wind turbine assessment. And in terms of the comments on the regression model, I don't know a better way to basically get to the lowest reasonable number. If you apply factor of safety and factor of safety and factor of safety, for example, if you were doing a bridge and you said, well, we'll double the weight of the car, we'll double the strength of the concrete, we'll double the hurricane, but there's a point where you're going to have the biggest bridge that you ever saw just to get a bicycle across. So we believe it's a very respectful, reasonable, and it's been proven out by the fact that the turbines that are up and operating without complaint have followed the standard. Unfortunately, the one in Falmouth that has been the matter of controversy, there was no background noise study done at that facility. I think that covers most everything. Oh, one other issue, which was the Nantucket standard is 45 dBA at the property line. We had followed the tech environmental study at the high school where they had used that as the calibration point for property line. With respect to, there's two, I think, impulse and humming sound. In terms of the whooshing sound, we don't believe that would trigger the, quote, hammering impact in terms of a annoyance. In terms of the humming, that's subjective, and I could see an argument where you would say, well, 40 dBA should be that standard. Having said that, there are no residential receptors on any of those sides where that that would be applicable. I think that's pretty much what I got. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Questions? Whitey, you all set? Other board members? Just maybe for Lauren, is this, I'm trying to remember the last meeting I attended. You were talking about another study that would compare the two sets of noise studies? Is that going forward, or how does that stand?
It is. We received proposals from 5 contractors and consultants on Monday, and we have an Energy Study Committee meeting tomorrow morning in which I was hoping to review the consultant choices and reach an agreement. But it is going forward. We need some kind of determination by Friday to ensure that all of the scope is completed by the 23rd of March.
Okay, thank you. All right, so that takes care of the first 3 speakers. The next we have Karen Palmer. Karen, are you with us tonight? And tell us a little bit about.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, could I just ask for a point of clarification before we proceed?
Sure.
I must have been mistaken when I had asked about the process that we were following tonight, but I had understood that the ground rules were that there were 5 minutes for the Energy Study Committee and 5 minutes for Common Sense Nantucket.
No,
and because of that, we've completely revamped and pulled back our presentation, where now I'm finding there's 15, 16, almost 20 minutes available.
Karen, I think we had agreed, or I did with the vice chairman, that each person, each speaker tonight would have 5 minutes, and there was not a specific discussion about whether they represented this group or that group. So I think when I discussed the matter with you, I indicated you would have 5 minutes, and you indicated that you understood that. So that's where we are.
Okay, and then may I just also add for the record that if my understanding had been better, that we would have had our sound consultant come here, who is very willing to address the group and is asked to do so on several occasions, and I feel...
I understand. I did not know Mr. Thomas was going to address us. In fact, he was not listed on the agenda until I heard from Mr. Willauer, who wished to have him on the agenda, and I obliged that request.
Okay.
So.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Is there anyone who would like to have a hard copy of the presentation to follow along with?
Karen, we are dedicated
All
to
set.
electronic copies.
Wonderful. Glad to hear that. All right. Then I will do my best to keep my remarks to 5 minutes.
Thank you.
On behalf of Common Sense Nantucket, thank you for the opportunity to provide highlights of our research into community impacts from the proposed Nantucket wind turbine. And since time is limited, let's just dive right in. We could advance. Thank you. What you're seeing in front of you is a map provided by the Nantucket GIS officer based on actual assessor's data from February 2012 of the west end of Nantucket. What you see in red are the residential properties. It's important to recognize that the siting for this proposed turbine, which is in the ground zeros in the bullseye there, is not in a remote wilderness area far away from people. And in fact, there are 200 residential properties within 1 mile of the turbine site and 600 within a mile and a half. And we'd ask you to keep in mind that the World Health Organization and various government jurisdictions with very long histories with wind turbines have issued siting standards that require 1 to 2 mile buffers between people and turbines. Next slide, please. A major reason that setback sightings are so important is that turbines inherently make noise. And powerful, tall, 30-story turbines like the PW56 thrust sound out over long distances. Now, the state of Massachusetts and the town of Nantucket have established laws to protect citizens from noise. And the Ambrose Rand Acoustical Advisory Letter, which was provided to this board and many others in early February, presents actual acoustical readings taken of a PW56 operating at the Berkshire East ski area. Those readings were taken according to field technique, and they were corroborated with manufacturer's readings to within 1 decibel level, and via readings provided by the consulting firm of SED for the same equipment in the town of Duxbury. Now, Massachusetts and Nantucket noise codes measure compliance differently, but under both standards, the PW56 actual measured sound signature fails to meet the codes created to protect the public. The PW56 will exceed the Massachusetts noise limits out to roughly 1.2 miles, reaching 357 residential properties. And further, this turbine emits hum at 220 hertz and impulsive noise, as the thumping and the grumping and the et cetera. In the Nantucket code, we know that 45 decibels are the nighttime limit for noise. However, also within that code, they tell us that if there is hum or if there is impulsive noise, each of those have a -5 deduction for a total of 10, which reduces the maximum amount of noise for the Nantucket standard from 45 dBA to 35 dBA. And next slide, thank you. Wind turbine sound and noise, along with flicker, which we understand from the Energy Committee will go out to about 1.25 miles, are important because they're frequent complaints that are raised by people living with wind turbines. In community after community in Massachusetts, in the United States, and worldwide, the pattern is the same. Turbines are proposed as good green neighbors, but after they're installed and operating, people living within 2 miles of wind turbines report health problems. These people have not been sick before. They are not hysterics. Many report themselves to be proponents of wind, but they point out that they are suffering with significant complaints, and you'll see them listed up there. And the only thing that's changed is that now they live near an operating wind turbine. So there are thousands of these documented cases, but unfortunately, there have been no comprehensive, reputable, large-scale, multi-year studies to sort out how the distinct, repetitive, continuous mechanical sound of a wind turbine in operation impact high frequency, low frequency, or inaudible sound. And in turn, how that impacts our bodies and the homes in which we live. Even the Mass DEP Wind and Health Literature Review that came out in January has indicated that such studies are needed to sort out what is true. Ontario just announced a 5-year, $1.5 million study to do just that, as dozens of its municipalities have called on the government to halt further turbine development until more is known about the health effects. And this call to halt the installations until more is known has been happening across this country and internationally: Denmark, Britain, Australia, Canada, Oregon, New York, Wisconsin, Maine, a few of the places that are taking a serious second look at health impacts and siting of turbines. Next slide, please. Just very briefly, because time is slow, I would just like to say to the chairman of the Energy Committee that Mr. McCann was indeed on Nantucket at the end of January when he came here to look at the properties and go throughout the entire island so he could make an informed judgment. In addition to that, his credentials are such that he is a nationally recognized expert witness in legal matters having to do with zoning and land use. Next slide, please.
Karen, you're close to wrapping up. Thank you.
There's one more slide.
Can I interrupt you 1 second? There's a gentleman raising his hand, and I'd just remind us all that we agreed as a board on how we would handle the process tonight, and we will stick to that. Thank you very much. Karen, we're returning to, no, excuse me. We're returning, Jason, what did I just say?
Point of order.
I am not lying.
Karen, please, just.
Jason, please. This is not a public hearing. This is an information session for the Board of Selectmen. We're trying to get this information out there. You'll have your chance. Just relax.
With respect, Mr. McCann was on the island in the end of January, and I can produce evidence to that fact if the board so desires. My last slide. The tide is starting to change in the dynamics of wind turbine projects, and according to senior engineer at NSTAR, Joseph Veracci, who helps NSTAR renewable energy customers connect to the grid, wind projects have dried up. That this year, he is seeing primarily solar projects. In recent years in Massachusetts, 34 cities and towns have said no to 77 wind turbines, and roughly half of all this backing away from wind power has come in the past since 2011. Just last week, at the urging of a citizen study panel, the Lenox, Massachusetts Selectmen said no to wind turbines for 3 reasons: financial, historical character, and health. And after studying stacks of literature, health-related, the citizens panel concluded there are still too many unknowns about how wind turbines impact health and welfare of residents to proceed. We respectfully urge this board to take the same reasoned approach. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Next, the board comments or questions for? Okay, Karen, thank you very much. Excuse me, Whitey, did you have your hand?
Yeah, there was a slide in here about property values. Are you claiming there'd be a drop-off in property values?
I am using the expert conclusions of the McCann study, which indicated, having looked at the Hohen, LBNL, and what's the other? There's one other study, that in fact those were no longer standing. They were discredited. And what he indicated is that there would be a value loss of 10 to 25, and in some properties as much as 40% for homes within the impact area of the turbine.
You're saying that's applicable to Nantucket?
I am saying that that is applicable to Nantucket. That's correct.
What's happening in Falmouth?
I don't know what's happened in Falmouth at the moment.
There has been no drop-off in property values in Falmouth.
What I am saying is the advice that we were given from a nationally recognized expert, an appraiser with credentials in this field, who has studied the matter in several different communities and has specific data which we provided to you to look at, has indicated that this can be what happens, and we feel it is only our obligation to bring it forward and put it into public discussion.
Yeah, but we've talked to the appraiser in Falmouth, and they've had no drop-off in value.
The town appraiser?
Yes.
Okay, that's different from what's may be happening in the market, and the town may not have gone through and reappraised these properties yet.
We haven't seen any change in values due to the high school turbine.
I stand by my data.
Do you think Falmouth is incorrect?
I don't have a way to answer that, Mr. Wilhauer.
If I could help out, I mean, I don't, having anecdotal information in a study, I think, are apples and oranges. So while I appreciate your point, Whitey, I don't think it's necessarily fair to put the public on notice with respect to, obviously, a study that that's been published. What's happened in Falmouth it may just be a matter of time. There may be other contributing factors. I don't think we have the capacity right here. We're not sociologists to figure that out. So I do think that it's not necessarily a productive line of questioning.
I think it is productive. No single house in Falmouth has reduced its value below the appraised value. There hasn't been any indication whatsoever, and that is not anecdotal, that's the truth. And I think it's very applicable to Nantucket.
I think what I'm inferring from anecdotal is we'd like to see the reports.
Hers or?
No, yours.
Well, we have it. We've talked to the people.
Right.
It's not a report.
It's
So you're
anecdotal.
questioning, no, it's not anecdotal, it's the truth.
Anecdotal information, not necessarily a lie, it's just a matter of getting data. But I know where you're coming from, but I do think that it's important for us to recognize that we're talking apples and oranges here.
Okay. Board members, we're all set. Karen, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And next, we have members of our HDC, and I think the issue here is to reflect on the consistency with our historic character. And we have 4 individuals from that commission who have asked to address the board, and 1 has asked to be first, and I would honor that request. And so we'll ask John McLaughlin first to address. John?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. John McLaughlin. I have some comments on the listing of the meeting tonight under potential impacts. I would like to state that at a meeting of the Finance Committee, February 13th, there were 14 comments made in relation to the wind project. And most of them were made by Mr. McCluskey. I find him on the Finance Committee a very intelligent man, and he asks quite a few questions that have, to my knowledge, as of today, have not been answered yet. They're in the minutes, so if you would like to look at them, I would like to see you looked into before any decision is made. My statement in the paper of questions and comments that I made, I stand behind them. Nobody has received any, I have not received any answers from anybody on the comments I have made that were, I think, instrumental in getting down to the facts. And I think, as I said in my letter, that the facts of the thing are not enough information on this project or any other that will substantiate voting for it this year. I find that it's just too early to jump off onto it. You need a lot more information from what I can gather myself. And also, as of today, I was notified that there's a possibility of a wind turbine being put out at the Surfside treatment plant, same size as the one that's up at the school. So I think both of them need a lot of survey, and I'd appreciate it if the board would see their way to postponing it for 1 or 2 years, because it's going to need that much to do it. That's the shortest speech I've ever made. Thank you.
John, thank you for being succinct. Any questions for John? Mr. Willard? Yes, sir.
Mr. McLaughlin, I know you're an expert at the dump. However, the Surfside wastewater treatment plant, we looked at putting a turbine there, but we're too close to the airport, so that is not an option.
Okay, one of the statements was that of the 172-foot height, I believe, that is in conflict with the airport's height requirements also out there at the dump, the landfill, whatever you want to call it, where I'm an expert. Thank you.
Other questions? No? All right, thank you. Why don't we then turn to the chair of the HDC, Mr. Barham. I believe you would like to address us.
Thank you. Just very briefly, I don't want to speak to the financial or health issues. Those really weren't before us. This was something that came before us in multiple hearings. We went out as individuals and viewed it several times, including the flying of the balloons and on occasions where the public was invited to come and comment. I think that the HDC frankly does have some difficulty when applications come before us for large modern installations of the kind that an island community is going to need. And as by way of example, I'd include water towers, microwave towers, air traffic control towers. There are certain large installations which tend to fall at the margins of our guidelines, and we tend to struggle. In this case, the board made a decision, was deeply divided. It was a 3-2 decision ultimately, not a 3-1-1 as was stated. And I think that we have members that continue to feel very strongly both ways. I think the best source for those comments are our proceedings, and I hope that anybody who has an interest will go there to hear about them. And unless you have some questions, that's my statement, Mr. Chairman.
David, thank you. Anybody questions? I thank you for clarifying the vote.
Yep.
Okay. Whitey.
Yes, Mr. Barnum, there was some accommodation to the HDC as far as the design was concerned. Could you eliminate those?
That's quite right. You came before us with several locations on the property, and we urged the selection of a location that you had not premiated, one furthest away from the road and one that had the least visibility. We also asked to have the turbine changed in color so that it was not stark white, and it would stand out a little bit less on the skyline. Both of those things were done and were appreciated. I do want to correct a statement that was made by the Energy Study Committee. The HDC finding was not that there would be no detrimental impact to the historic character of the island, rather that it was approvable under the guidelines. Is there anything else?
Follow-up question, Whitey? Or, Dave, one question that I have. The HDC approval is specific to the turbine presented, or does it apply to turbines in general, or how do we deal with that?
It's specific to the turbine model that was presented to us. If something else is going to be erected with different visual characteristics, it would need to come back.
Gotcha. Any other questions from the board? Whitey?
I think you also dealt with the lighting of the...
We had concerns about the very bright white strobe lighting at the top, which is more visible, and we expressed concern that there not be a visible signage on the turbine at the top of the mast.
Gee, I think we remember signs on substantial structures.
We didn't feel yeah, we didn't feel that this turbine should be an advertising opportunity for the manufacturer.
Gotcha. Okay. Bobby?
I just have a question, David. I'm assuming that the FAA will supersede you when it comes to lighting, correct?
It would, but I understood from the applicant through Mr. Willauer that they had worked an arrangement that would allow us to go to a lighting method that would be less visible and less distracting from the ground.
I just wanted to be clear that
Yeah.
I wasn't clear there. Now I mean, I agree, and that's what I've read, is that it's going to be a red light and not any strobe. But at
Right.
some point, if the FAA decides they want to put a strobe there, they have that right.
We've got that exposure, that's right.
Whitey?
Yeah, and I think finally that your determination limited it to 324 feet, so we could go below that, but not above that.
Well, if you're going to change model, you would need to come back to us. I would imagine you would find it easier to come back with something smaller, but if you're going to propose a different turbine, you would need to bring the new turbine before us.
We were using a model, I mean, that wasn't necessarily the turbine we would get, because we still have to go through the RFP process. So that means that we would have to, if we got a different turbine, then we would have to come back to the HDC, even though we fulfilled all the other requirements?
That would be my expectation.
They'll be coming back.
Interesting.
Okay?
Okay. David, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And next, we can turn to Linda Williams. Linda, are you here this evening? Where's Linda? There she is. Linda's a member of our HDC of long standing.
Way too long. I have to second what our chairman just said. I don't have a whole lot more to add to it, except to just stress that the HTC did have several meetings. We had several site visits. We spent quite a couple of meetings on color alone, and every time we made a request, the applicants came back a week or two later and found the information in the intervening time. There was never a real argument at the table. It was a very professional process. We were pleased with the information they provided. Every time we asked a question, they provided it. We did have the issue about the lighting. We sent them back to talk to the FAA, went all the way up to a higher power than the FAA here, because we were insistent that they not do the strobes and the white lights on the top, and that was resolved. So it was a very productive process. We did not though certain members of the public tried, we did not get into the merits of the turbine, its efficacy, net metering, health issues, things like that. It was simply an historic viewpoint of a majority of the HDC that this was in harmony with our policies and historic character, because historically windmills had been all over the island. We have to adapt to new technology and try to make it coexist with the historic aspects of the island. So we felt that it was, from our limited jurisdiction, it was approvable.
Okay, Linda, thank you. No questions? All right, thank you, Linda. And next we have Kevin Kuster. Kevin? Again, another member of our HDC.
Thank you very much. As I tell my friend David Barham, painting it gray will not make it go away. I wanted to first, I've got some prepared comments, but I wanted to first say that I think it's really unfortunate that this has become so divisive. I've got friends on both sides of this, and they're all good people, and they mean good things. I don't think there's anybody in this room that does not want clean energy, that does not want to save babies, that does not want a better place to live. I think we all want a better Nantucket. Anyway, so I stick to my time. Let me keep going on. Last week, officials on the Cape won a long-fought battle to block the construction of a 242-foot tall turbine in the Kings Highway Regional Historic District outside of Dennis. We're facing a similar threat here on Nantucket, where our cherished and irreplaceable viewshed is under attack from another industrial-scale turbine. As they did in Dennis, I think we really have to fight to preserve our island's historic character. Here's the reasons why. The turbine is simply too large for the island. The Energy Study Committee says on their website that they downsized this proposal as originally recommended and presented to the HDC. The truth is there never was a bigger proposal. The larger turbine, and the only reason that this isn't any larger is that the larger one that they had looked at was not able to be delivered to the site. It would not fit on our tiny infrastructure of the island. This turbine, at 30 stories tall with 80-foot blades, will be seen from every corner of the island. It is simply too large. Secondly, this project lacks universal support. The Energy Study Committee failed to mention the lengthy debate that this proposal took place at the Historic District Commission. They suggest that the sole input was to make the turbine gray. In fact, this project was defeated the first time before the HDC only after it was held for revisions so that two previously absent commission members could attend did it gain approval. It has never been universally accepted. A project of this scale should have consensus. Too little is known about the impact of the turbine will have on the island economy. I've asked many times what kind of impact this would have on our tourist economy. The truth is, no one knows. No study has been done simply because no historical places have seen this kind of proposal before. No one can say what may happen. We are taking a chance without knowing any of the facts. Before this island embarks on a project of this scale, I believe careful and thoughtful analysis of the effects it will have on our tourist economy, both positive and negative, needs to be completed. Without it, I believe we are entering unknown territory from which there is little room to turn back. Lastly, it's our duty. Nantucket's historical attributes led to the formation of the HDC. As its enabling legislation states, its primary charge is to preserve and protect Nantucket's historical buildings, places, and districts so that the island's travel vacation industry is maintained. This isn't just about one part of the island. A lot of people I've talked to didn't realize that the whole island is a historic district, and it's been so since 1963. I think the Selectmen also need to put Nantucket's historical attributes first. Failure to do so is irresponsible and a disservice to those who hope to enjoy Nantucket in the future. Nantucket's most unique attributes, its scenic landscape, its peaceful, rural spirit, its historic charm, are of immense value. These are irreplaceable. These resources don't belong to any one individual to any one corporation, to any municipal government. They are essential to the identity of Nantucket. To protect them, based on what we know, we must say no to this project. That is what I urge you to do. That's what I urge the citizens of Nantucket to do. Thank you very much.
Okay. Questions for Kevin? No? Kevin, thank you. Going back to our original understanding, and just to make sure I've got it right with the board, I think we agreed at this time that if there were questions from the public specifically directed to any of our presenters, and the intent is to be short and succinct, that we would entertain them. Is that our understanding? So, with that understanding, who would like to start? Gentleman up and back. Yes, sir.
Good evening, everyone. Charles Lindner, head of the Plains resident, closer than Nantucket to this proposed wind turbine. Didn't plan on speaking tonight, don't have any prepared notes, will not take up your 5 minutes. But a couple thoughts that come down the pike tonight. You guys talk about noise.
Can I say one thing, excuse me? Because I think we had an understanding where the idea here is to elicit information and to have questions of the folks. So I assume that's where
Certainly.
you're going.
Certainly
I don't
is.
mean to interrupt. I just try to emphasize as we go through this process that we're headed in that direction.
Everyone on both sides of the
Okay.
equation has gone into the sound of noise and how far noise travels. You're putting up a wind turbine. The premise of it is that wind will drive this. Wind drives your noise. You have not done any studies with 45-mile-an-hour winds. I hear the boat whistle when the boat comes into town. I'm out in head of the plains. I'm certainly going to hear this. So to both sides, sitting all around me, it needs to be addressed with the wind factor. You talk about the flicker factor. Whitey, I've heard you, and I heard somebody respond to how many hours a day it will be. It will be 24/7. From my house, I look back to town, I will be looking directly through this windmill. I see the church in the distance. If you guys want to get between the church and the windmill, that's up to you guys. I'm not going to do it. But it is flicker 24 hours a day. It is not limited to the sunrise. Final cost was the finances. You've already passed on the fiduciary obligation not to pass it on to the town, but we're beyond that. If something happens from a medical standpoint, which has been addressed this evening, and me being one of the closest residents to this, if anything happens medically to myself or my family, the town needs to address how deep their pockets will be for themselves and for my neighbors who are in the same boat. Go ahead, sir.
Again, I think the idea was to have a question addressed to one of the participants so that we're not sort of redoing our public hearing, which we had in January. So I hear you.
Okay, I have a question that addressed that they've gotten permission from the land bank. Have they gotten permission from the town to cut off a land road if this does happen to fall over? This is on a public road per town clerk. It is on Massasoit Bridge Road. That is not immediately adjacent to the land bank. It crosses a public road. Do we have any resolution from that? I haven't heard. I brought that up at a prior meeting. I haven't heard anything back about that.
Okay.
So I will leave that. Those are my questions. My 2.5 minutes is up. I apologize. Any questions?
You don't
from
need to apologize. You know, we hear you. I'm not sure there's a response specifically to that last question about the road tonight, but it's one that people eventually will have to answer. So thank you. All right, somebody else back here? Yes, ma'am, right here, and then we'll move around.
Hi, my name is Giza Kim. Dr. Weld and Ann Katzba has mentioned about the noble goal of displacing fossil fuel and energy independent. In order to be energy independent, not too depending on fossil fuels here in Nantucket, we need more than 200 wind turbines of proposed Nantucket wind turbines we need. And therefore, that one turbine actually produces less than 0.5% Nantucket energy needs. So therefore, I am an advocate of energy conservation. And I really strongly believe that Nantucket, town of Nantucket, can have comprehensive energy conservation program that we can produce more than 0.5% of energy, and whole town can.
Again, do you have a question of one of the presenters? And this is, I can see this is difficult. People want to express their thoughts, but
So my question is to be, in order to be energy independent, if you want me to ask the questions, then I would ask Energy Committee, how can we be in the long term completely displace the fossil fuel and energy independent by wind turbine? And that's number one question. And then number two question about and Katzbach has mentioned no bird kill. And actually, I visited the town of Charlemont to see the Berkshire Energy Power Wind 56, and there was there was evidence of the bird kill. So I like to ask the questions where she has there is no evidence of the bird kill, and then. The second question also, Ann Katzbach, she has mentioned about the environmental impact of Long Pond and the Heather Creek and Nantucket Harbor. My understanding is more than 20% of nitrogen loading coming from landfill. So if we clean up landfill, I think we can get rid of a lot of environmental impacts. So I just wanted to mention that three aspects of it. Thank you.
Again, we've had what I think of as we're drifting from questions for presenters to longer statements. So is there an understanding? I can see this is going to continue to be difficult. And then I saw Mr. Willhauer's hand here. Yes.
Would you like to go first, Whitey, or
Whitey?
you'd like to go first? Oh, okay. Thank you, Ms. Kim. Okay, so three things that I heard there. Energy independence, where do I come off saying about this? The way I think about it is my household budget, okay? If we're spending too much money, I need to look at each component of my household budget and make cuts. So if I'm spending too much on groceries, I can make a cut there. If I'm spending too much on my utilities, I can make a cut. So this is basically reducing our dependence on fossil fuels, which for a fact is coming from natural gas and nuclear plants. So that's why we're presenting this as one step towards a more comprehensive energy plan. So energy conservation, agree 100%. The landfill has already had audits, and anything that's been presented to us at this time, it's a very efficient operation over there. So we believe we've maximized energy efficiency concerns there. So I hope that answers your question. As far as the bird kill, Ken corrected me. I was not aware of that. One, I was speaking to the high school turbine and to the Bartlett Farm turbine. So I was told by the operator of the high school turbine, that was, I don't know, maybe 3 weeks ago, that there was none, but I guess there was one. Maybe Ken can talk about that later, but that was where I was coming from there. And then what was the last thing? What's your last question? Okay.
Okay. Ann, thank you. All right, let's see here. You want to follow up, Whitey?
Yeah, I was going to take your first question, which was the impact of a single turbine and what does it do overall. And I was going to direct that toward Dr. Well, because I think that you answered that the other day very well. So are you ready for that one? It isn't. Thank you.
The question is, what is the health impact of one 900 kilowatt turbine over the lifetime?
No health impact. It's just the energy, how much energy it can produce to meet the demands, clean
No.
energy demands.
Well, the amount of energy is 900 kilowatts.
So what percentage of Nantucket whole consumption? What percentage of the energy
No,
consumption?
that wasn't the question.
I don't know.
Less than 1/2 of 1%.
I heard you say that.
That wasn't what I...
Yeah, we got a little disconnect, and I suggest we move on.
Yeah.
Okay? So let's come over here. Gentleman up in back there. Yes, with the plaid shirt?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
My name is Parker. I'm a resident. My question is how does it get? Who decides? I don't know who to direct this question to. Who decides where the energy goes? Because I live here. I've lived here my whole life. And am I going to get the energy, or is it going to go to the dump? Is it going to go to the big house out in Shimo? That those people aren't even around most of the year. I'm just.
We got an answer, man. Here,
Yeah.
Bobby, please.
Okay.
It's sold back to National Grid.
Yep. And then we're all on that, yeah.
Of the town's electric.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Did I do that right, Woody?
Yeah,
Michael?
that's partially correct. My understanding is that the energy generated will be used to power the landfill operation, which is a significant amount of power.
Yeah, that was also going to be,
And then extra will be, no?
No, you can't do both.
You can't do both. You have to do one or the other. My mistake.
Okay, in the middle, Mr. Sanders?
Wait, may I respond to that, please?
Yeah, that doesn't
Just
sound right.
the actual power will be consumed at the dump. I mean, it's produced there, they're using power there, the actual electrons will be used at the dump.
Yeah, folks, please.
That's a good question.
Well, it depends. May I answer this, Mr. Chairman?
You got it, Mr.
Yeah.
Willauer.
If you're behind the meter, in other words, you've got the wind turbine and it's linked up directly to the composter, then the electricity would go there. But we're planning to link it up to the grid, so it goes into the grid, and then it would...
And then it's distributed that way.
Yes, distributed. So there's two possibilities, and we've selected hitching it up to the grid because if it's a better solution.
The performance based on it being net metered, so going back into the grid. not-
Correct.
Okay. Well, we've got someone coming to the mic right now, Mr. Sanders.
I have an actual question.
I say thank you. It's
This is
not
a-
easy, Grant. You
This is a
gotta,
question to one of our four HDC members who may or may not be in the room right now.
I see one, so he,
And probably best answered by Linda or John, because they've been on the HDC a long time, but I'd like to hear David and Kevin's
sure.
opinion
Let's
as well.
give it a try.
You know, this is sited at the dump. The dump also features a very large, 200-foot long, 36-inch circumference digester that is probably not considered a historic thing on Nantucket. And I just wanted to get a sense for how those deliberations went at the HTC and whether that is germane, whether they feel that's germane to the question of the windmill at the HTC.
Sounds like a
the
fine
dump.
question, and that was what, 19, when did that happen?
Is it 94?
Boy, I hate to date us all.
95?
So David may not have been around. Linda, are you?
I didn't understand.
I think what I understood the question was that when the HDC considered approving, I guess, the
Digester.
structures at the landfill, including the digester, do we all remember what the considerations were, and did those impact the discussion and decision related to the turbine?
Well,
Am I close, Grant?
It's not only large, it's white, too. just to
Yeah,
point out.
right. It's horizontal, not vertical, and it's white.
It's white.
See, we remember.
If we're talking about the MRF building as opposed to a piece
No,
of
the
equipment that
digester.
moves around, I don't remember us ever dealing with the equipment. We deal with the MRF building. The digester,
It may never have come before you specifically.
I don't remember hearing that ever coming. We deal with buildings, and the industrial site was one of the things we did consider. I doubt, frankly, we'd ever approve a windmill in the old historic district, which is 99% of what you see downtown, all the way out to Cumbies, up to Pleasant, up to the windmill, up to Cliff Road. I doubt that anything would ever be approved there. There are only a few spots, as far as the HCC was told, that a windmill of this size could actually be located, the dump, because of FAA issues, other things going on. So that's why we considered it. It was industrial. Where do you draw the line as far as the HCC is considered? We have the modern dock apparatus down at the Steamship Authority. You take that out, you take the the cell towers out, you take the water towers out. This was looked at as a utilitarian update of the 100-some-odd windmills that existed here 300 years ago. You have to try to figure out how the HCC is going to deal with modern technology. So that's how we looked at it. We looked at there was an historical precedent, how is it manifesting itself today, and what's the best place to put it? And that's where we went.
Okay. Kevin, you want to try that one as well? So Grant, we'll get 2 comments for you.
I will give that a shot, but I don't think it's too big of a secret that there's a lot of things on this island that are never seen by people that we approve that you would kind of be appalled at, actually. Our purview is from things that you can see from a public way. And believe me, there are a lot of things going on, a lot of contemporary things. There's other wind turbines, there's solar panels, there's all kinds of stuff out here. You just can't see it from a public way. I see that as one of my jobs to make sure that we protect, our vistas and the things that we do see, so that when our tourist folks come and our homeowners come, they get the Nantucket experience. And hopefully they get the experience of what it used to be or what they thought it was, instead of what, now a few people want to make it be. So if you can't see it, go for it, Grant, would be my answer on that. And I think you're beginning to get some of the dialogue that we had at our HDC meetings, and we were very divided on this. I happen to think that a wind turbine of this size, seen from everywhere, is not in any way, shape, or form comparable to the one old mill that we have left. Sorry, but I don't see that jiving in my scope anyway. So anyway, hope that answers it. Thanks.
Kevin, thank you. All right, now, let's up here, Mr. Flanagan, and we'll get to everybody. I urge each person to be quick and succinct, because eventually the board's going to say it has to move on to the warrant. So we don't have an open forever session here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, apologies tendered. Lying was probably not the right word. I didn't mean to appear hostile. That is my failing. I apologize. But secondly, in regard to my question, I was curious to note that they said that the appraiser did in fact make an inspection of the property. However, if you look...
How about your full name, please?
Oh, I'm sorry. For the
That's all
record,
right.
Jason Flanagan.
Some of us know who you are, but not everybody, Jason.
Right. Sorry. Apologies tendered. However, in the actual McCann report, it states in his certification, number 8, no physical inspection was made by McCann Appraisals, LLC, of the property that is the subject of this report. The undersigned used photographs, maps, property record card data for characterizing and understanding the character of the subject property. Further, if you look at the sources cited by the McCann report, which is the Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory study, the Heinzelman study, and a third one, which he dismissed out of hand, the actual data in those studies does not say what this report says it does. With regard to the Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory study, they actually saw increases with what the study deems extreme views of turbines. They rose by 1.7%. So, and with the Heinzelman study, only 2 of the 3 counties they studied were included in the report. In the third, property values actually increased as well. So I was wondering if somebody from CSN could explain why that data was left out of the analysis.
I think they're free to respond or not. Jason, there you go.
Okay.
So let's move on. I think Carl over here, Carl Borcher.
Can we get a point of reference?
Sorry.
Just Bird Hopper, just as a point of reference.
Yeah.
She's not, so CSN is choosing not to answer this. We've had all questions answered, so I'm just as a...
I would suspect that's the case. Okay?
Clarification on that?
I don't know what clarification you need. If they don't answer, they don't answer. Karen, if she chooses to. I mean, this is a situation. It's not a We're not in a court of law, and we're not having a debate. So you've pressed the issue, and Karen?
I stand before you to say that in some ways I did not understand the complete focus of Mr. Flanagan's question. I think it is fair to say that we have a severe difference of opinion as to the reliability of the Hone study and the LNLB study. And there has been a position paper that's been issued by Common Sense Nantucket explaining and describing the problems that we have with it. I would be happy to, it's on our website, be happy to make it available. I apologize that I don't have the exact recall of all those things, but we've got 17 pages on it, and it's all good stuff, and it's exciting reading, so be more than happy to share that with you. Bottom line, we reject the methodology that was used. We reject the fact that these studies were paid for and funded in large part by wind advocacy groups. And as I say, there are other issues that we could get into. So, thank you.
Yes, Bobby?
You know, just for everyone out there, you know, I don't want to get too in-depth into this to the extent where for every paper that's written, there's a counter paper that's written. And without the authors of these papers actually sitting in this room defending their papers, it's pretty hard to sit here and point fingers at people. I mean, you know, in this packet that we have this week, there's there's opinions from all different sides, and then there's counter opinions, and you read them, or I read them, and I take them at their value, and that's really all you can do. I mean, without the author here, I'm not comfortable sitting here questioning the validity of these reports, and that seems what's going on here right now. So, you know, I think that it's important for everyone in the public to read these reports and then decide on their own. I mean,
Yeah,
we're not here to do it.
We're all cherry picking one part of anybody's report. So I understand, and within the constraints of time, we're trying to go through the process, but I hear you. So let's go on. Carl, back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the board, members of the public, I have 3 quick questions. The first question was for the sound fellow who was here. Did he go? Lauren, perhaps you can answer this. The state of the art on these machines is, I don't know if the PW56 has this. The tower is surrounded by foam insulation now, the length of the blade as it passes before it, greatly reducing the air compression problem as the blades pass before the tower. And the blades are feathering blades now. Can you tell me if the PW56 or a similar unit that the town is interested in would have that technology?
Lauren?
The town would only consider a turbine of a modern design, which would include a feathering blade design.
So no foam insulation on the tower?
I can't speak to that.
Okay. The second question is for Mr. Kuster. With all respect, what was your professional opinion as a member of the HDC about a 46-story cable TV tower at the dump for about 40 years? I was just curious if you had an opinion on that.
That never came before us. I wasn't on the board when that happened. I think that I like cable TV, and I like my electricity, and I think the people that come to Nantucket like both of those things. I'm also glad that we have an underwater cable and not a cable stretched across over to the mainland. And I think that these are all, it's all part of the mix to think about. And I tell people that, you know what, I'm not going to see it from where I live. I live in a little house. I'm not going to see it. And will it make some people go away? Maybe. Do I care if there's less people coming to Nantucket? Not really. But I do know that that I have friends and I know people that their businesses and their livelihoods depend on those people coming here, and that's why I do what I do and say the things I say. So that's my answer.
Okay, thank you, Carl. Did you, Whitey, sorry?
I'd like to answer that a little bit, expand upon it. We're very lucky to have that tower there because it was instrumented, and we got wonderful wind data from that tower. We had at different heights. It was fortuitous that we used it for the right purpose, so we have some of the best wind data around because we had the tower. And we probably shouldn't have knocked it down, but we were thinking that ought to be the site for the first turbine, but as it turned out, the HDC fortuitously put us at the other site. Thank you.
Carl, back to you for the third one.
Yeah, I just had when I was a child in the early 70s when that tower went up, there were very few public hearings and long, drawn-out, polarizing debates at that time. They put it up one day, and it was 467 feet tall with guy wires. So that's kind of a jarring industrial structure that was at the landfill for 40 years. So it's all relative. But my third question is, with all respect to Karen, I don't know your last name, I wouldn't address you by your first name. Have you read the executive summary of the DEP DPH report that came out in January? That was commissioned at the request of the town of Falmouth by the Falmouth residents, and where it said in the executive summary, which is available on their website, there is no evidence of wind turbine syndrome globally, and there is no evidence of infrasound damage, possible slight sleep disturbance. And this was commissioned by the state, and they reviewed from June of 2011 until January when they released it, and they found no evidence of wind turbine syndrome or infrasound damage in any current literature or studies that were available. And it's important to remember that this was commissioned at the request of the town of Falmouth and the Falmouth residents. So I just wanted to make that.
Did she read it? Is that
Yes,
what the question
that's what
was?
the question is. Please.
Sure.
Actually, yes, I am very much aware of that report that came out, and also that my understanding was not that it was at the request of the town of Falmouth, but that it was put together at the state level, Mass DEP put it forward, and that we're in the process of receiving comments. In fact, I think the last comment period has just gone by. At all those comments, and also within many of the written environments, the findings of that report are being severely questioned. The methodology of the report is being severely questioned. And I'm sorry to once again go back to my report versus your report. That really doesn't get us anywhere. But what I did speak to in the presentation earlier is that throughout that report, we see references to the fact that there is no existing longitudinal study that gives us the good information that everybody in this room wishes they had, so they could say yes or no. And it's really that need for that longitudinal study, the one is happening now in Ontario, that's going to help all of us out of this pickle that we're in and give us something to bank on. So, yeah, I'm aware of this study. Long response to your short question. I don't know your name either.
My name's Carl Borchert, ma'am.
Thank you both. I think with the consent of the board, we will cut off this session at 8:10, 8:04. I think I got the idea. So we'll take two more, and, whoever will start.
Thank you, Mr.
with
Chairman.
more, and then we'll go to the gentleman there. So 1 and 2. Carol, I got, I don't know what to say. Mr. Olson. Yes,
Mr.
sir.
Chairman, Bob Olson.
Questions?
Resident, and you wanted a question. The town is going to expend upwards of $4 million to put up a generator. That is to save money. The subsequent year it's in effect, my tax bill will go down by what amount?
It will go up.
It's a directed question.
Okay, so the answer, you got one answer. There might be several different answers, who knows? And then here, back here in this, yeah, the blue? Yes, sir.
Mark Palmer, I've been invested owner in Nantucket for 18 years, resident for the past couple years. And question for Mrs. Palmer, we're not related, right? I have some context to sit here. I called a guy named Malcolm Brown, sir and hire to the turbine, okay? He had a lot to say about, there's no, in the McCann study, there's no mention of that. There's no mention of Falmouth. There's no mention of there's no mention of Bartlett Farm and the property values around there, which are fine. No mention of the Nantucket High School. So I guess my question is, why are those things all censored out of that particular McCann report? And then I have more questions about, did you know that there are dozens and dozens
So
of...
we're critiquing the report, and your question is why
Yeah, so the
were they
question
not
is, did you
included?
know that there are dozens, this McCann goes around, and the 84-page report that you hold is a template that's almost word for word. It's funded by this guy, Bob Schleedy, who, or McCann is called by Schleedy, who funds a lot of these opposition groups. One of them was giving
We got a
opposition
tape-
to
Mark,
Whole
Mark,
Wind.
we got a tape change. Hold it,
Okay,
please.
so
that's your question, though.
So were you aware of all
Mark,
this
we have a
stuff? Yeah.
tape change?
Okay.
Stop.
How's my hair?
I should know who I have to ask, Carol. We got a thumbs up. So that's
are
the
you aware
question,
of all
right?
these issues about, McCann is sort of seems to be a hired gun. He goes around, he has
I
this
think you're
template.
making comments at the moment. Your question is she aware of something?
Yeah, right. Where did the funding come from? Things like that.
Gotcha. Karen, you don't have to answer any question if you don't wish, but you're welcome to answer. Did I get a thumbs up back there?
Yes.
Okay, we're back on.
I can answer a portion of your question, and it's nice to meet you, Mr. Palmer.
Mrs. Palmer?
I know exactly where the funding came from for the McCann report. It came from people who donated money in the Common Sense Nantucket group to pay him to come here. The reports that have been done by the town have other sources of money. We wish we'd had access to those, believe me. In terms of what we paid him to do, we asked him to come to the island to take a look and to give us his expert opinion, and that's what he did. Thank you.
Okay, Mark, thank you. Now, that's it. Now, I'm going to take one privilege of the chair, and Carol has said she would have a question that would be quicker than anybody's because she's in the front row, and there's some things you just have to do.
Carol Dunton, and a quick question for Common Sense Nantucket. I was reading this evening, and I'm a little taken aback. Your suggested reading, blowback against big wind, includes such language as, for liberals here in the United States, that kind of lazy thinking and brain-dead liberals and wind energy lobbyists, is that language Common Sense agrees with?
Yeah, here we go.
This is going to be dangerous. My name is Jim Albert. I'm with Common Sense. I probably posted it on the website because I'm in charge of the website. I don't read everything that goes, every single word that's on the website, but that's not necessarily something that we would agree with.
Okay, but this is...
Carol, that's the question. We've had an answer. Thank you. You agreed to be short and sweet. So that we will end this portion of our agenda, and thank you all for perseverance, and thank the board for their indulgence. And next, we are moving on to
the warrant.
The town warrant, and the board has a copy of the warrant as it's been prepared and reviewed. So we have the recommended motions of the Finance Committee are included. And I think we're going to get that up on the screen in back of us. And maybe just to make a comment for the board, so we all need to think about again what we're doing tonight and how we're going to manage this as well. I think board members know there are a number of options here. If you go back 10 years, the Board of Selectmen made no comments on the warrant. and the warrant went to town meeting with the recommendations of the Finance Committee. That's always one option. And then the board has since then been willing to make sometimes comments or recommendations on specific warrant articles, and sometimes to be more broadly making comments on a number of articles, just to say we go along with the recommended motion from the Finance Committee. So, also, I think one of the things we ought to think about tonight, because some of these, as we know, can be contentious, is it a discussion we should have at the board level, or do we want to entertain comments from the public on each item as we go through, or we'll take it for the end? It may well be the board wants to handle this on its own, because we've all had an opportunity to go through it thus far. So I'm looking for a little thought from board members on how we wish to handle the item. Michael?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My inclination personally would be that the board not necessarily comment throughout the warrant. Obviously, there are articles that have been put forward by the Board of Selectmen. I think our position is probably fairly clear on that, at least as far as the majority of the board goes. In the past, I know that we have sometimes asked individual members to select articles that they may or may not wish to comment on, and maybe that might be one way to go forward. I'm personally not inclined to have the board comment on any of the articles. The motions are all there, and I think the citizens are going to be able to weigh the issues.
Right, that's why I said one way is to say the motions are there. The board could decide to let the warrant go forward without any comment by the board, and we are all free to comment and debate those articles at town meeting like all other citizens who come forward. So, Bobby?
Just to bring Michael up to speed, because he wasn't here last week, we did a preliminary look at the warrant, and I concur with you. We don't need to make a comment on every one of these articles. I think we could go through them rather quickly. If anyone has something that they think we should add to it, we can discuss it. Otherwise, we can just move on to the next one. There are a few specific ones in there that I think we need to deal with. There are some outstanding issues that we should probably address. But for the most part, I think, the FinCom's put a lot of time and effort in this, so has the Planning Board. I think that we should, go with their recommendations.
Yeah. Patty?
The point in my mind is this is a charge of the FinCom, which they've executed, and now the responsibility of town meeting, and we will have our voice as well at town meeting. And while I do think we should just go through them for the sake of it, I'm not in the mood, or I think we don't need to be necessarily commenting or adding any.
And the question of public involvement as we go through this, is this something the board would like to do without entertaining that on each item? Or
I think the public had ample opportunity to comment at FinCom meetings and Planning Board meetings, and then again at town meetings. So, this is really, this isn't a debate. The debate will be happening at town meeting.
Right, so, and there's, I would also add there are some issues where I think we're disagreeing, but I do think that it's not within our scope to make any large changes here tonight, personally.
Right. Well, I think the normal sequence here is we don't make changes other than adding a comment if we choose to. But the document as presented will go to town meeting. So, all right, so it sounds like what we're saying is that we'll have an opportunity, and Libby, if there's some specific things you want to alert us to, we would hear that, and articles the board wants to discuss briefly, we'll do that, and we will not entertain public comment on each of those. We'll get through it and move the warrant to meet the timeline presented by the town manager.
Mr. Chairman, there might be certain articles that people would have a specific interest in it. So I don't know that we ought to carte blanche say no public comment. We may need some information.
Well, Whitey, I'm not sure. I think what I heard Bobby say, that we've all had ample opportunity. There's been lots of heavy discussion, and absent some other direction from the board, I think we might be consistent across the board in how we handle that question. So,
there's a hand up.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman.
A point of order?
Point of order.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Richard Brannigan, Vice Chair, Community Preservation Committee. We are, the Community Preservation Committee, a town agency committee with a state mandate. And my point of order is specifically regarding Article 67. As you are aware, last year, this article, in another fashion, Article 70, was raised, and it was debated and discussed at town meeting. We were commissioned through our Board of Selectmen representative who sits with us to retain town council to remedy this bylaw amendment issue that has cropped up over the last year or two regarding the CPC committee. With the retention of town council gave us their opinion, and it was crafted in the warrant for Article 67. Lo and behold, there was a modification to that we did not have an opportunity to address at FinCom, which I found, disappointing that we didn't have that opportunity. I believe it was presented last week. I've spoken to FinCom. I'm hoping to address this issue with FinCom and raise it to their board prior to town meeting. And that's my point of order.
I hear you. Thank you very much. So, back to our sequence, and Libby, do you want to pick up things that you want to bring to our attention now? I think there are one or two items.
Yep. Let's see, I think Article
13.
Did you want to touch
Article
base on 3?
Yep,
Yep.
3 on page 14. 3 is reappropriating prior year articles, and many of this is dealing with the airport capital projects issues, which you recall are projects that were either overexpended or spent without borrowing being in place, things of that nature that the town now has to cover in some way or another. So a lot of them are reappropriations or reallocations of various airport articles, but there are some town articles that are going to go to the airport as well. And one of them is an article from 2006. It was Article 20 at the 2006 annual town meeting. It was an appropriation from the ferry embarkation fee of about $200,000 or so, $220-ish. There's $101,000 left. And we haven't used it for a while. The original appropriation was, as is noted in the highlighted yellow there. So what we'd like to do is reappropriate it to deal with this airport issue, but I wanted to bring that to your attention to make sure there were no objections to that.
Right, I think Libby was pointing out that we were able to use this article for the Wilkes Square study, is that correct?
We did, and initially...
And if there were any, really important time issues on getting at some of that again, whether that might impact the reallocation here?
Yeah,
Is
it
that
didn't
sort of
seem
what-
like there was anything in progress or on the table or...
And if there is anything, we can bring it back next year and ask the town to reappropriate it in effect in a new article, so. But it helps us get through this situation with the airport.
So this one's good, I can take the yellow off? Yeah, if everybody's good with that, you can take the yellow off and take out the checking on part at the end. I think that was the...
That's pretty much, is that it for your?
Yeah, I think that was really the one thing that I needed to definitely bring to your attention as we go through. Oh, I know, there is one more thing. Article 10, this is the general fund capital expenditures.
Yes, I think you should mention that. 10,
as you all may or may not know, we do not have free cash certified yet. We are waiting for that from the Department of Revenue. The information was submitted about 2.5 weeks ago. We're hoping to get it any time now. Our Department of Revenue field rep is visiting on Monday. If anybody wants to meet him, please let me know. We have posted an audit committee meeting in case there are members who would like to meet him for 2 o'clock on Monday. The items that are listed in that article may or may not need adjustment prior to town meeting. assuming we do get free cash certified before then. So I just want to let you know that.
Right, and Libby, I think, just to clarify, this is the, in essence, the so-called 1% for capital that's incorporated within the Article 8 operating budget.
Yes.
And we want to make sure members understand we have allocated roughly 50%, if I've got it right, to the town and 50% to the schools. Is that roughly where we are?
Yes.
And what, absent any free cash, unless there's something extraordinary, we would go forward with these articles?
Yes.
Okay. Michael?
And
Chair,
just-
I'm sorry for my ignorance, not having been here for a couple of weeks, but the likelihood of free cash being certified,
The likelihood of free cash being certified before a town meeting is high.
really?
Whether or not now, it might be 0.
Right.
Yeah, that's not to
But
say we
it will
get
be
any, but
certified.
certified it, right?
Right.
It will be certified before
Okay, but
town
we'll
meeting, I'm
know
pretty sure.
where we are.
Yes.
Okay.
So will this be a technical amendment?
It'll be a technical amendment, and I just want to point out that this is probably not all that exciting to you, but the school items are going to change a bit. I had to communicate with the school superintendent early in the morning, but he was out busy, wasn't able to get to this until the end of the day. So his numbers have changed a little bit, but the bottom line remains the same.
Okay, so he's just
He's just reallocated a little bit, yep.
That's the word.
Okay. So you want to move forward, you're set?
Yeah,
think?
do you want to get to 11 at some point, or just as you guys
Yeah,
go
I think
through?
why don't we do it, it's sort of in the sequence, the next one is 11, but I think we want to point out the motion of the Finance Committee, make sure the board's alert to that. And also, I think, so we all understand how it relates to Article 59.
9.
Because Article 59 addresses the keeping of offices downtown, and I've always felt there's a relationship between what we plan to do in terms of construction for facilities and that article. So if town meeting reaffirms that article, it's likely to have a significant impact on our planning efforts. And to remind the board, Libby, you reminded Whitey and myself this afternoon that the understanding we have from council at some point was that 37 Washington Street, just to make sure I got it right, was not included in the downtown district as called for in the article. Is that correct?
Yes.
So that's something we'll have to deal with at some point also. Just kind of for information to tie it all together. Anything else on 11? Okay.
How are you going to resolve 11? Are you going to have a comment or no comments?
I don't think we should have a comment.
I'm not prepared to recommend a comment, would you?
Well, I'm asking whether we're going to do it or we aren't going to do it.
Well, I think we start out, Whitey, by saying the board could decide not to make any comments. If it felt strongly about an article and one of us wished to make a comment, they're, I think, free to bring it forward tonight and ask that we do so, in which case we might have to take a vote and deal with that issue. Otherwise, we could go to town meeting with the warrant as drafted, and we all deal with questions there. Michael?
Mr. Chairman, is there a sense, or maybe informally poll the board on where they stand on support for this article?
Well, I'm happy to hear from him. My own sense, I tried to pay fairly close attention. I think the motions, we may not be all happy with 11, for example, but there's some rationale to the thought that went into them from the Finance Committee, and I think they're all reasonable to me. Patty?
Yeah, again, it's a philosophical discussion. I think that, but to me, I am a citizen as well as a selectman, and my citizen responsibilities belong at town meeting. And, it's the same reason I didn't weigh in as our rep to the Capital Committee necessarily, because, the assignment of scope belongs with the Finance Committee, and it's really not our place to, either challenge at this level, to challenge or to change by comment what might be someone's take on the article. That's my opinion.
I think also,
Bobby?
Mr. Chairman, the FinCom uses our own adopted guidelines for the reason not to approve this article. So we either have to revisit our guidelines in the next year if we decide to resubmit this, but to go against our own guidelines right now is foolhardy.
Michael, then we'll come back to you, Whitey.
Yeah, well, I guess what I'm getting at is there, are we likely to have some sense of confusion considering the fact that we put this article on the warrant? This is a Board of Selectmen article. We asked the voters of the town to consider this article. So I think the assumption is going to be among the voters, unless they hear otherwise, that the town supports the article.
Well,
Patty?
and that's a fair assumption. I think that, ultimately, any one of these that are our articles, are something that we should, just by virtue of the fact that they're ours, we've put them forward. So, again, as far as policymaking is concerned, this is now a town meeting conversation, as far as I can see.
Okay.
And, yes, we've made our stand, the FinCom has made their stand, and let's leave it up to the meeting.
I agree.
And each of us at town meeting to comment appropriately. Whitey?
Yeah, it says in the FinCom comment, finally, the Finance Committee recommends the town continue to explore the feasibility of relocating town employees from 2FG to offices in the core district. Now, that has a ripple effect.
They just don't want us to pay for it.
Well, we haven't gotten to the point where we
Michael.
had a project that incorporated all of it.
I asked that exact question at the FinCom meeting. I said, well, in one breath, you're telling us that we can't afford it. But they were very specific too. And they said that they didn't say we couldn't afford it. We said we couldn't afford it. The Board of Selectmen set the guideline of 12%, and that's where we're at. So if we want to go forward with this article, we need to change that policy. Or we need to discuss it further and decide if we want to do that. What they did say was that they would like to see the renovation project be larger in scale so that it would include planning to move back to downtown. So that was where they felt that the article in itself fell short by only putting finance in there and not bringing planning back to town as well. If they would, I think that we maybe would have gotten a little more support for it had it been large enough to encompass all of the town.
Right, and if we'd addressed the debt issue up front in some way, and I think that's something we know we have to get our hands around, when we come back to this next year. So, Whitey?
Yeah, when you say continue relocating employees from 2FG, that isn't just planning. They have, don't they have the GIS there and the GIS is there?
Whatever's in that building, they want it back downtown.
So you want to clean out that building?
That's what they would like, yeah. That was the message that I got.
Including all of the temporary employees that we have during the summer and such things?
No, I don't know, Whitey. I'm just giving you the message that I received. I mean, am I off the mark here, Matt?
No,
And that was pretty much the comment.
I think it's pretty clear, Bobby, that their comment, I think, expected that we would address all those kinds of issues in a planning process that should take place before next year, Whitey. Those are all good questions.
Maybe I should miss more finance committee meetings. Great idea.
Michael, I think this would be something that would appeal to your heart, so.
And if I may ask, the 12%, now what is the origin of the 12%?
This board.
We might turn that over to the town manager. I'd be happy to give you my rendition, but Libby?
I think it came from a variety of sources, including what other towns' guidelines are. The financial advisor, probably Mark Abrahams, weighed in a little bit on it.
Yeah, I think it came out of a process that we've been advised that the town would be well-served to adopt a number of financial policies concerning how we budget for things, how we manage our expenditures, what checks and balances we have, and how we manage our debt in relation to our income. And it came forward with a recommendation, and I think it's well stated of the Finance Committee that we pay attention and closer attention to a policy we adopted, so.
Who recommended the policy? Was that the Finance Department? Was it one of our outside consultants? How did we get there?
It was developed by the Finance Department, yes, with input from the people that I mentioned. And I think we obviously need to take another look at it.
Yeah, I think when you go back and you look at the schedule presented to the Finance Committee, it's pretty clear that we adopted a policy that if you looked at it strictly, year by year, we already have a ratio in excess of the policy. So one sort of interpretation or management's question, Whitey, is that to be over time? Sometimes you're a little above, sometimes you're a little below. What is the target? And I think we need to lay out a plan so we understand how to get to where we want to get to. So. Okay, more questions on that?
I have a question.
Yep.
If the board is not going to have a comment, I'm a little bit not understanding what my role is supposed to be with regard to this article. Am I supposed to support it if the board isn't really supporting it anymore? I have several groups lined up to go to talk to about it. We've developed an FAQ sheet. We just did a video walkthrough of Mooney Building and 20 South Water at the board's discussion 2 weeks ago. Now that we have the FinCom motion that's a not to adopt, are we not continuing for the time being, or?
Thoughts from the board?
Not clear.
You know, I'd be happy to start. I think, Libby, there's a sense that the Finance Committee is reflecting a broad segment of the public, they believe, not just their own views on this. And it suggests the timing and planning efforts need to be revisited. So my own sense is I don't think we should spend a whole lot of time, board members, please speak up, asking you to try and develop positive thought for this article for this year. So that's just my reaction. Patty?
And I would add, I mean, there's a long-term goal here, and I don't think we disagree on the long-term goal. So on any kind of project like this, when you get to a place where you've been working, very hard on getting something pulled together, and there's a proposal, and the proposal isn't necessarily it hasn't passed the Finance Committee in this case. We don't know what town meeting could disagree with this. So, it's not like dead in the water for sure. There's still a fair amount of discussion to have about it. But I do think it's a benchmark, it's a place to begin, and I don't get the sense even from the comment here that, and we'll see what town meeting says, this is not something they want to continue, they don't want to discontinue the conversation. Right. They just don't feel comfortable with the proposal, either on the fiscal level because of the percentage, and then possibly its scope should be larger, which, is kind of a interesting approach too. So at any rate, that's what I think we're seeing here. I, like you, would probably suggest you not spend a tremendous amount of time on it, given your other needs, in terms of focus, but it doesn't go away. I think it just goes back to slightly back to the drawing board.
Michael?
Mr. Chairman, I'm a little confused by the Finance Committee's language here, I guess. Because we have motions from the Finance Committee that are positive motions. Then we have motions that say move not to adopt. Then we have motions that say move to take no action. Now, this is, I think in my 6 years on the board, this is the first time I've seen a comment from the Finance Committee move not to recommend the article. Is that technically a motion, not to recommend?
No, their motion is move not to recommend this article.
But that's, I think, I'd be curious to know from the moderator whether or not that constitutes a motion, technically.
So it should say move not to adopt?
It should say move not to adopt,
that
move
was
to
their
take no
intent.
action, or it should be a positive motion, but this is not, I'm not sure technically this constitutes a motion.
Sounds like a good question, Michael.
So.
Yeah.
Wasn't it not to adopt?
I don't remember. Yeah, I think their general intent for not recommend is do not adopt, so I can revisit that with them.
But I think the motion should be succinctly.
Yeah, so I think if it's okay with us, we would ask Libby to touch base with the chairman of the Finance Committee, see if the language could be modified before we absolutely go to print. Would clarify that question.
Matt's
You may
here.
want to comment. Matt?
Can you do it without your board?
Well, sometimes you just
Have to.
if the intent is clear, let's make the language clear, because Michael's comment is a good one.
Good evening, thank you. Matt
Hi,
Mulcahy,
Mr.
Finance
Chair.
Committee. Thank you, Chairman, Finance Committee. On your point, Michael, when we started adopting motions, there was some discussion about language to use, and not to recommend, take no action, and to recommend were decided to be used. And we thought there would be more of maybe a kinder, gentler way for the public to understand.
If I can respond, Mr. Chairman, I understand that, I understand the intent. I guess I'm concerned about the technicality of the motion. The town meeting needs to vote to take an action, and the action is to be contained in the motion. And so the action is either to take no action or take an action, but move not to recommend. I see counsel shaking his head over here. I think we need to get maybe some legal advice on whether or not that constitutes technically a motion at town meeting.
What I will do is go ahead and be in contact with the town moderator and let her weigh in, and then be in
Touch base with Libby and
yes,
see where we go. And we're
we certainly
encouraging a
want to do
motion
things
that's
legally,
clear.
and we don't want to put a little fly in the ointment.
And we always appreciate the Finance Committee's efforts to be kind and gentle, so I
Mr. Chairman.
appreciate
Hey,
that.
that's one way.
Bobby?
You were asking for where, Libby was asking where she thinks we should go. I concur with you and Patty. I think that you've put a lot of effort into this. With a negative recommendation from the FinCom, I think we're going to have a pretty tough sell for this, from what I'm hearing around the community, and I think that, her time could be better served. We'll take this off the table for now and then revisit it.
And we're going to get ready to get back at it, because it's not going away. The Mooney Building isn't getting any prettier, folks. Michael?
Mr. Chairman, I agree, but it's too bad.
Yeah.
And I think we maybe dropped the ball here, and to watch that building sit for a year, and watch the Mooney Building sit for a year, and watch everybody working in those spaces, and to have no progress on it for a year is really a shame. But I can see the writing on the wall as well.
Whitey?
Yeah, I'm concerned about this line in the sand of the 12%, because, it's 12.4% this year, but next year it's going to be 11.6. In other words, our amount of borrowing is going down. Now, what about, why are we making this line in the sand when we've got more opportunity to borrow next year and still stay below 12?
That's true. You're absolutely correct. I think that the committee felt that with the guidelines that were enacted initially this year, is that we wanted to hold up as much as we could to fit those guidelines for this year. For the outgoing years, and this was one of my personal issues with it, is how could we decide on a number, because we're not sure what projects will be coming before us again. For example, the Mooney Building. We as a committee realize that the state of that building is in. We also realize that a long-term solution has to be enacted. But being what we are, is the fiscal watchdogs, is that we felt that, or the committee felt at this time, going ahead with Article 11 would put too much of a stress on our debt service and raise that percentage to a level that may be difficult to fund future capital projects as years go on. Does that help?
I think we're going to need to think this thing through more carefully as a board of this guideline and its implications, because I hate to see a hard and fast number that we didn't think of the unintended consequences when we did it. Now we're becoming more knowledgeable.
Right.
And I'd like to think that we'll explore this in a little more depth.
You're absolutely right. I agree. And my feeling was that those guidelines are what they are, as guidelines. And to live fast and hard with them is short-sighted.
Good. So we are where we are, and if the board isn't suggesting a comment or a change in the warrant other than clarifying the motion, shall we move on?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Libby,
Thank you.
Article 12, I think we all know the, yes, Bobby.
I'd like to put a comment in here that says that we won't authorize the borrowing unless we receive the gift of $500,000. Because the Finance Committee's comment it discusses it, but I'd like to be a little more specific, and I think we have the ability to do that where they didn't.
Question, I don't think we can bind a future Board of Selectmen.
Well,
I
this
guess all we could say is our intent, to the extent
I'd
that
like-
we're still around. I mean,
There must be some way that we can write the language that will appease everyone, that will,
Well, we could recommend. That's where it works.
Yeah. We could write something to say the Board of Selectmen, recommends
Right.
To the future.
to the future board. I sort of like intends, because clearly you're correct. We cannot bind.
Yeah.
And any decision any board made can be turned over the next week, so it's a tough world out there.
well, I guess I'm confused, but I would imagine this is going to happen in the next year, and 4 of the 5 members on this board are here right now, so we're going to all still be here in a year,
Yeah.
so.
So I like intend, but someone can pick another word.
I'm with it.
We can say, Bobby, the board intends that it will not go forward with construction of the bike path without receiving the $500,000 gift.
That's fine.
Still a different board.
Well,
Well, you might want to, I don't know if you want to say will not go forward with the construction of the bike path at all. I mean, you might
No,
want
no.
to say at this time, or
unless the $500,000 comes through.
With it.
ever. There will never be a Hummock Pond Road bike path built unless we get a $500,000 donation?
No.
I'm
No,
not
I-
sure you want to say that.
Yep.
I guess, you know what I'm trying to get at, but.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think you
Right.
should be very specific.
So maybe it
Well,
gets
I guess
difficult to
I'm-
write, and we
I'm not
just
quite
do it.
sure how you write it, but the complete bar, like you said, Michael, if we don't get the money, we can do it in phases like we were originally going to do, but,
Right, and town meeting is going to see this as something that's connected, and so the town has to reconsider it. So it has to go back to town meeting, in my opinion, if we don't get the match, or if we don't get the $500,000 gift, then it needs to go back to town meeting for their decision, so.
Right, but we've been going forward with the design and construction of the Hummock Road bike path for many, many years, and I assume that we intend to continue going forward with that.
But we weren't doing it with override money.
Right, but that's not what that says.
Well-
That's why I think we should be more specific
Okay.
about it.
Well, I'd be happy to take any advice, I'd like
We'll
to
not
have
go
some type
forward
of
with
language.
With the accelerated construction
That's fine.
of the bike path, or, I mean, just to be very clear about it.
Or construction under these conditions.
Our intention.
I'm assuming we're not, if we.
That's why I was gonna-
$500,000, we don't intend to abandon the Hummock Pond.
No, but we don't, that's why I tied it to the borrowing. If we don't receive the $500, it is our intention that if we don't receive the $500, we won't sign the bond.
Then maybe that should be the language
Right.
of the comment.
Yeah, but you can't do that.
We just did.
You can put it in. They may tell you to pound sand.
Yeah.
Well,
Absolutely. So,
I guess we're no closer on that then.
Something like that, intend that it will not go forward with borrowing for
The accelerated construction of the bike path without receipt from the $500,000. I'm fine with that, I just don't know if council's going to be.
no, let's not worry about council. I think in this case, it's an intention of the board to make a comment and explain where they think they're headed, and if
Yeah.
it says it's close enough, okay? I
We
don't know
could
if
be
you want-
ignored, it doesn't matter.
How could they do that?
We could change our minds.
So unless there's a strong objection, we'll have a comment, and if there's a small word sleuthing between now and Friday, we'll move along.
Sounds good.
All right? Any other thoughts? So we'll move then to 13,
So we can, like, if we need to tweak it.
if you have to, right. Okay, 13, we know the motion of the Finance Committee is not to adopt with their comment, to keep working on alternative energy projects. So if there's no discussion, we'll move on to other articles of interest to the board.
So you're taking no comment on this one?
I was asking if board members wanted to comment, Whitey. I didn't hear anybody feeling they wanted to add a comment to what's already in there from the Finance Committee.
If we're supposed to go on and study this, we can get some money for it?
I would ask you that. I don't know. could ask the town manager. I mean, is that a question you would like a response to?
Well, they were recommending that we do further study, and is there going to be some money associated with that?
Well, I'm not sure how to respond, Whitey, except usually we either have money within the town's operating budget, and there's a professional services line item that's within the control of the town manager, or we bring back capital articles to the next town meeting. Michael?
I think, thank you, Mr. Chairman, I think Whitey's concern is absolutely valid and a good question, and totally not germane to the subject on the table, which is the selectmen's comments to the warrant articles. So
I'm trying to get
we can take it up at another time.
You're more succinct than I am, so thank you.
We can take it up at another time. I think we should.
Well, what's going to be your intention?
Whose intentions? The board's intention?
With this article?
Yeah.
I concur with what the Finance Committee says
Yeah,
here.
you're going to, your next board, are they going to finance this?
Well, you'll find out when the next board sits here.
Okay.
I mean, right now, we're going through this year's town meeting and the comments on these articles.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we all set?
Yep.
Sure.
All right. So what would be the next article that any board member wishes to discuss, and see if there are any further actions? If not, we can assume that we'll go forward with the comments of and the motions from the Finance Committee.
I'm concerned about Mr. Brannigan's comment. I just want to understand better what was the, necessarily the issue with respect to that. Was there a change in the
Yes.
language?
67?
67.
I'm happy to describe it to you, Patty.
Yep.
And I mentioned this several weeks ago to the board, that I, as one member, and I think others may or may not agree, that the recommendation placed in the warrant was one that I thought was not the best solution. So last board meeting, I indicated to the board I would seek counsel to draft an alternative approach, and there are essentially two changes from the article in the warrant to the recommendation that the Finance Committee moved. And those changes are primarily to require that each committee designated ask that the member of that committee be the one to serve on the board, Patty.
Okay.
Okay? And the two committees that were exceptions in the draft were the two committees that would have been subject to the local bylaw, not the State Enabling Act. That's the Land Bank and the Board of Selectmen. And it was my sense that we ought to be consistent across all committees, and that there was a rationale that the members of those committees serve. The other change was that the initial...
So just to clarify.
Just go ahead, sorry.
So the Land Bank and the Board of Selectmen have the capacity to appoint someone who is not a sitting member?
Under the current draft, not under the motion from the Finance Committee.
Okay, so the current draft of the article, though, is, as I just stated, but the motion changes that.
That's
so-
correct,
okay.
exactly.
Okay.
So the motion is a motion that incorporates each committee involved in selecting members to the CPC would have a member from that committee. And I was asked at one point, I think by, I'm not sure, some member, what happens if someone can't attend, for example? And I think that's true whether they're on a committee within the state jurisdiction or the local, and the intent is that they cannot have an alternate who could vote. They could have an alternate who could attend, participate, but they can't vote, and that would be consistent across all those committees, Patty.
Okay.
Okay?
Mr. Chairman, for clarification, the language that is written here in the original section 1121 that's highlighted, Patty, was written by Lauren Goldberg with the CPC's input to clarify the issues that arose last year at town meeting that was overwhelmingly defeated. This was to clear those up. I brought the language and Lauren to this meeting after our CPC meeting. You and Michael were not here that night, and we approved the language And then since then,
I think we
Rick will-
approved putting it on the
I'll
warrant,
just-
not the language, but
I'm
go ahead.
I'm just going to
Yeah.
finish here. Lauren was comfortable with this language. It cleared up any issues and technical issues with the sitting board that's there now.
So,
My only problem with this whole thing is that it was written, the amendment was written by council on your request, Mr. Chairman, given to the FinCom. The FinCom adopted it. No, the CPC was never notified that this was happening.
Right.
So they couldn't speak on it. And I will tell you right now that when this comes up at town meeting, I will pull this article personally, and I will ask for the original language that was written by Lauren, that was approved by the CBC, to be approved by town meeting. And I thought, when we discussed this 2 weeks ago, that we were going to discuss the amendment on the town meeting floor and not change the language. And if I had known that the language was going to be changed in the FinCom motion, I believe that not only myself, but the rest of the CPC would have had something to say about it, and would have been at the meeting to discuss it with the CPC.
Okay. Well, I would agree, Bobby.
That's fine. So I think it will be pulled, and we'll go from there. Right. Yes, Mr. Mulcahy?
Yep. Thanks for letting me talk again. I know you're busy. On 67, the Finance Committee has a meeting on March 22nd, and this discussion was brought to me by Mr. Brannigan today at the CPC. And what I'm going to do is next week at our meeting is put this on as a agenda item to talk about this and hear the CPC side, and the Finance Committee will discuss it, and we'll see where that goes, too.
Right, and you
Just
could
in all
always
fairness.
bring an amended motion to town meeting if you
That's
thought
correct.
it was appropriate, right?
That's correct.
Sure.
Just to-
I'd like a little bit of clarity here. Apparently, what was recommended here was this first bit, and that was town council approved that. Then, I think it was yesterday, maybe it wasn't, yesterday, the Finance Committee, at your recommendation, changed this to read differently, correct?
Correct.
And had that been, did that go through the Board of Selectmen?
No, it was done by me as an individual. It did go through the Board of Selectmen so that the board knew I would contact council to draft alternative language.
So it was were you acting as chairman of the Board of Selectmen, or were you acting as an individual?
I was acting as an individual, but I would concur, so you understand, that the board, I came to the board to ask their permission, or receiving no objection, to have council write the specific language.
Did you tell us what your intention was?
I think my intention was clear, but I'm not sure I told you it was my intention to proceed, but it clearly was. And I have openly felt that the recommendation that came forward that Bobby referred to was not the right one, and we've had previous discussions about that.
And did the Finance Committee know this is you speaking as an individual, or did they assume this is speaking as the chairman of the Board of Selectmen?
I'll answer that. It was made clear that Mr. Atherton was speaking as an individual, but that, as he said, it got permission from the Board of Selectmen to use town council.
But not defining what changes would be made.
There were two. There was the original warrant that we had, and then there was the amended motion, which was voted on by the committee.
So all that was, permission was granted was to change, but there wasn't any indication what the change was.
Well, that would have been at this table.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think two people were absent, weren't they, when this
Yeah.
occurred?
My question is, so the permission was granted to give you as private citizen the right to use town council to rewrite this to reflect your position on it. Is that the point?
Well,
Is that typical?
Obviously, there's some, and as I said to the Finance Committee, this would be an article clear that has some contention, and I understand that, so.
For clarification, I remember Rick saying he was going to go to council to rewrite this, to get an amendment. What I don't remember hearing was that you were going to take it to the FinCom and then get it as their motion. And that's the problem that I have with this, is no one from the CPC, or me as the designee from the CPC, knew that this was going to come in front of the FinCom to explain the article. And I have a little bit of an issue with that.
So it seems to me a good resolution of that, and I appreciate that, is to do exactly what Matt's doing and have a rehearing, so to speak, and that sounds like one way to deal with it. And if the motion recommended by the Finance Committee changes, it would come to the town meeting in that fashion.
And I would also like to say on a more general level that I don't think we need to be in the business of providing town council to independent citizens to rewrite articles to reflect a change in perspective from our perspective.
Gotcha.
But this is going to appear as is it's going to be printed this way.
It is.
So we're stuck.
Well, unless they call a meeting in 48 hours, they could meet Friday and take it out if they wish.
If you look at the original language that's written in here, on page 129, Whitey, that is the language that Lauren wrote with the CPC.
Yeah.
So where the change is in the Finance Committee's motion. So, if after the meeting, that could be stricken, and the Finance Committee could make an amendment to, technically, that says that they adopt the language as written.
Or, Mr. Chairman? Or not.
Or not.
I think
Exactly,
it's up to the
but at least-
Finance Committee.
Right.
I mean, I happen to agree with the Finance Committee's motion more than the original warrant article, but that's certainly up to the Finance Committee to decide at this point.
I agree, Michael. I just want to make sure that the Finance Committee has all the facts.
They will have all the facts.
Can you let us know when that meeting is?
It's be March 22nd.
Second.
Again, the reason that this will get a separate agenda item and hearing is that we want to be sure that both sides have their say. And at this late hour, I can't think of another option that's better than this. And if we change, we will bring it to town meeting.
But regardless of what's right and wrong and who's in favor and who isn't in favor, the process is flawed. How we got there, the process is flawed. And so it could be misleading.
Whitey, that's why I suggested if you really want to do it, they can call a meeting, and, we're going to print on Friday. They could always agree to change their recommendation, and on 48 hours, you can call a meeting and do that. So that's an option.
That is an option. What time does it go in the print on Friday?
Yeah, it's not 48 hours.
Yeah.
That's what I thought. That was my
We'll just have
understanding,
to
too.
do it on the 22nd.
I think there are, I understand going to printers and going to printers, so
I
if
just-
you really wanted to do it, you could do it.
This has been a learning process for me this first year of warrants and stuff, but I think in the future that when things like this arise, there should be a little more clarification as to what is said when we start rewriting motions. We should actually, I think that in the future, anytime a motion is rewritten like this, it should be voted on by the entire board before it is taken to FinCom or written by town council. Because, I understand that you presented it to FinCom, Rick, as a private citizen, but it was somewhat in your chairman of the Board of Selectmen capacity that you had town council rewrite it. So there's a little bit of gray area here, and I understand what Whitey's saying. So just for in the future, we need to be a little more black and white.
Okay, so I accept the remand, if you will. Thank you. And I do offer a solution, and incidentally, the timing, I know you want to go to printer, but you could get it done if you wanted to, so, anyway.
We'll get it. We'll just do a technical amendment.
Okay. Other articles that would, to be discussed?
Do we need
We could mention the mosquito thing, yeah. Probably should.
So is there,
We clear on that article on the parking garage? Did we clear that one up?
66.
Is that ours?
No, it's citizen article.
It's a citizen article. That's what I thought.
You can just go to 76 after.
so the Finance Committee is moving to take no action on the article, right? Make sure we're on the right one, Whitey?
Yeah, I'm less inclined to actually do much with citizen articles, frankly.
What about,
So no, 66. Okay.
I'm saying no.
Yeah, I have no problem with it. It is what it is.
It is what it is.
Are you saying no what?
I'm not,
No comment.
no comment by the Board of Selectmen. I'm not exposing my positions on anything.
What I didn't mean supposing, I just want to know what you were trying to, if you, okay.
Do you want to mention 76, the mosquito control? The board had inserted, well, we had written for us a motion from town council, which is a home rule petition pertaining to establishing what would be known as the Nantucket Mosquito Control Project, and this is modeled after a number of other home rule petitions that other towns have adopted. However, the Finance Committee elected to eliminate 2 sections of the original petition. Sections 4 and 5, which relate to funding. They had some difficulty, and it started becoming very complicated to understand the value in having the town reduce operations and have expenses come through on the cherry sheet for this project, and then it also goes back to the state through a board called the State Reclamation Board, which is what happens in a lot of other mosquito control districts, but these districts mostly have multiple towns involved. It's not really the same situation. So after a lot of discussion and back and forth with town council, they've taken 4 and 5 out, again, which I said are the funding mechanisms, and basically it's down to establishing a kind of a mosquito control commission, which is subject, and a project, which is subject to certain provisions of the general laws, one of which would allow the project to enter onto private property for the treatment of documented mosquito-infested areas, which I think probably needs a little more work in how they get identified and how the property owners are notified, things of that nature, which would all be worked on by the commission. But anyway, just so.
But the powers coming from the state for a commission remain. I think that's the main thing here. It's just the money, and I think the feeling of the Finance Committee was that if we're going to appropriate money, let's appropriate locally as part of our budget process.
I agree.
so this will give us the teeth, and then we can work out the finances why this is being approved.
I think so. And meanwhile, we do
Yeah,
have.
we do have 100,000
Yep.
operating override, which will go up 2.5% a year forever. So there's money there now. Okay, other articles? Anybody? Are we all set?
I think so.
Okay. So I think, Libby, then, do we need a motion that the board wishes you to proceed to print and carry forward to town meeting?
I don't know if we need a motion. I think we're good. You only had, what did you have, 1 or 2? One comment?
Only one comment, right?
Okay. I think we've got it.
So that, I guess that takes care of that item.
We don't need to
And
formally approve it or anything, adopt it. or-
Did you sort of do that, or was it mostly consensus to have that comment? You could vote on the comment if you
yeah, I think
wanted.
we're going to
How much
give
for
Bobby the
Oh, I've
latitude
been
if you want to
plugged
change
in.
it.
I'm up to 90%.
I
I've
don't,
been plugged in the whole meeting.
I just want, I want it in there so people know.
Yeah, I think we agreed to put the comment in on.
Yeah.
Okay, right,
On the Hummock Pond?
yeah.
Yeah.
As long as everybody's comfortable with it. I just wanted something in there so that people realize that we wouldn't go out and just borrow the money if we didn't get it.
Right. So, committee reports, next agenda item?
One quick thing.
Yep.
I'm sorry.
No, it's all right,
I didn't
go
cut
ahead.
anybody off. I went to the SHAB meeting yesterday about the scallop closures, potential scallop closures for seed areas. They are going to close a section of the west side of the harbor from Pimini Point down to the field station and out to the edge of the deep water where they're still getting scallops in the deep water. And I reported to them that I did go to the Bass meeting, hearing in Boston last Tuesday, and represented the town. And I have another hearing that I'm going to on the 19th of March, which is in Fairhaven, for Amendment 5. Amendment 5 is for the heron fishery, too.
Oh, I read about that as
Yeah.
well.
And I would like to be able to say I'm representing the town there. I was going to draft a letter, Mr. Chairman, and get it to you for the next meeting that you could take a look at and approve. But the heron fishery is very important to our fisheries as a whole, and in a matter of 6 weeks, the midwater factory ships have gone 152% over their quota. And they've already closed the season down, 3 million pounds in 6 weeks.
Well, I think we're lucky to have you, Bobby, paying close attention to this, so we welcome that. Patty?
This is not actually a committee report, but I actually indulged and went out to the airport today and got a tour of the helicopter from the Army Corps of Engineers. So I wanted to say thank you to Carol.
Did you go up in the air, or?
No, they won't, yeah, they've got enough weight. I guess there's a whole, system that they go through with respect to the equipment and the weight and how many people they can get in there.
This
but-
is the one with all those things?
Yeah, and I got the pictures from a couple of weeks ago, so I went out, I gave them a call, Carol, I can't remember her last name, got the team, together, and they were great, wonderful. They showed me the whole operation and had a little information session with the different.
Have they found anything yet?
No, they're actually only gone up one other time besides this morning. The wind is just going to be such a problem for
tomorrow's
them.
gonna be
So.
even worse.
Glad they discovered it.
So I had to tell you that I went out there to
Well,
see
good for you.
see the
That's exciting.
helicopter.
It's like airport day or something.
Yeah.
All right, any other comments from board members? Nope. I think we've done our agenda. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Bob?
Bob?
Motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn, made, seconded. All in favor, say aye. Thank you all very much. Yes. Carol, I knew I had to call on you. Yes.